Наші Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 583 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today, the Russians met with the Taliban. Just when I thought I'd seen it all.
Man, and I gotta tell you, it was a little interesting meeting. We're gonna be getting to that here in a little bit. I don't even know what to say about it, actually. I was trying to come up with something. I was like, that's just so bizarre. You can't even really say anything about it. But of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and tonight we actually have a special segment that is going on in the Balkans right now. As many of y'all may know, there is currently an armed escalation going on in between Serbia and Kosovo right now, and it does appear that according to many analysts, this has the telltale signs that it may become an armed conflict in between the Serbians and Kosovans here very soon. But before we get into that news tonight, there is loads of news to cover from all around Ukraine, all inside of Russia, and all the way up towards the Norwegian-Russian border. And to start off with a little bit of an appetizer in Russia, we got to hear that Norway is denying entry to most Russian vehicles at this point. According to the information that we got from the Kyiv Independent today, we can see that Norway restricts the entry to Russian cars. Russian-registered cars with 9 or fewer seats will not be able to enter Norway from midnight on October 2nd, the Norwegian Foreign Ministry announced today. This was something very interesting. One, who the hell has ever heard of a car with more than 9 seats? I believe that's now a bus. But also, really nice to see that they are going to start trying to ensure that Russians cannot end up crossing the border into Norway, because it seems as though Norway has now become the country of choice for many Russians to attempt to flee into, and also for the Russians to potentially try and go further west by entering Norway. We've also seen that a Wagner captain defected to the west across the Norwegian border, and then just a few days ago, we didn't report on this, he actually tried to cross the border again back into Russia, and then was apprehended by Norwegian authorities that are now holding him in prison to then be transferred to Ukraine to be charged for his crimes against the Ukrainian people. They actually weren't going to do that until he tried to run away, and then they went, oh, okay, you want to play games? You're going to Ukraine. And they went, no, don't do that. But still, very nice to see that the Norwegians are going to be getting a little bit more serious here on this little bit of a game. But moving on from that and up into the area of Tver, we also got to see something really interesting today, and I just got to say, look at that, like the caption says. So check it out. This is chocolate fudge. And what's interesting about this chocolate fudge is that it says up here, assemble Russia. And I'll show you right here. This is what it says, Suveri Rossio. And that means assemble Russia. And what's very interesting about this little Russian assembly is that it has multiple oblasts from Ukraine. It's Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. And there are little individual pieces of chocolate inside of this box, and you open it up, and kids assemble annexed parts of Ukraine in pieces of chocolate. If only the war was that sweet, because the Russians are currently getting their asses beat. It's a very bitter thing for them. I think what would be more proper to do is get some of those hot cayenne peppers with that chili, and then have them eat that instead, because that's about what the
But
war tastes
seriously-
like for the Russians.
But seriously though, it's like what children are getting the ice cream and opening it up and looking at it like, oh wow, like this Russian propaganda is great. It's like they just want to eat the ice cream. They don't care about the countries or whatever they're putting together. It's like,
Dude.
the Russians are so stupid.
Dude, some kid in Russia is opening up this box. Oh, yay, Crimea! And he's eating Crimea. But anyways, a really weird little thing we're seeing in Russia. And of course, the Russians are trying their best to force propaganda down everyone's throats, including the kids. But this is just a new level of weirdness about this war so far inside of Russia. But moving on from that, and on down into Moscow, we also got to see a Russian explain what Russia's like in words that I've never heard so poetically put before. This is probably the best way I've heard anyone describe Russia in Russia's history, and so we're going to be playing the video and letting y'all hear what the guy says, largely without interrupting him, because it's good to take all in one continuous go. So here it is. What prevents us from living a better life without war? We don't know how to do that. The entire history of Russia consists of 3 stages. The first is the preparation for war, the second is the war itself, and the third is the recovery after the war. After the reconstruction, what do? We prepare for war. Check the whole history of Russia. Consists of 3 stages. The only question is the length of the stage. We can't let our neighbors live better than us. We're an empire. We have to be the coolest in the neighborhood. And whoever lives better than us is our enemy. America, for example, is a great enemy. When has it not been Russia's enemy? Only when Russia fell into total poverty and had to be fed. That's when America stopped being an enemy. For a short period of time. And then it became an enemy again. Why? Because it lives better. What's the problem with Ukraine? They've been developing. In 2014, the minimum wage in Ukraine was lower than in Russia. Well, logically, because of the war problems, etc., in 2017, the minimum wage in Ukraine caught up with the minimum wage in Russia, and by 2020, it overtook it. Before the war, Ukraine showed a minimum wage higher than in Russia, but at the same time, prices there were a quarter lower. My wife's parents from Shevakino went to Kharkiv on shopping tours. Can a czar allow that? What prevents us from living better without war? The fact that we are an empire, that we only exist only as long as we oppress others. It's such a harsh reality. Our bread is suffering of others. We oppress our own regions. Just compare how in Moscow and how Buryatia lives. There's a difference of 200 years. In Moscow, they have skyscrapers. In Buryatia, they go to the toilet in a hole. It's not a joke. It's not a meme. People there actually go to the toilet in a hole in the ground. Russia will be a great place to live as soon as it's divided into nation states, when Russia is no longer ruled by one crazy czar in a bunker. But as long as the czar makes decisions on Moscow, wars will be constant as well as problems. And I gotta say, no truer words have ever been spoken by a Russian than these right here. It's not even worth going through and dissecting each statement and saying why it's pretty accurate. It just largely is. I mean, almost nothing he said was wrong, really, from his perspective, or really anyone's perspective. So we're going to be moving on from that, and now into our next one in Moscow. And this one is something that we have to talk about a little bit more seriously. Can't really joke around about this one. You can't really laugh about it either, because this is a Russian show trial of one of the defenders of Mariupol that had been captured in May of 2022 and is now being held on trial inside of Russia for his quote-unquote crimes against the Russian people and also Nazism. This is something I'm going to have to say, it's not against YouTube's community guidelines. Let me make that very clear before we get into this, but some of y'all may find it disturbing to see nevertheless. And I do have to say that while it isn't against the community guidelines, it is absolutely sickening to see what the Russians have done to this man who is on trial today. They brought him into the box today inside of the courtroom, and the press started to take pictures of him inside of Russia, and he looks terrible. This man looks like he has been tortured, beaten, abused, malnourished. Every single thing that could be done to a person has been done to this man, and now they're going to drag him through the embarrassment and humility of going to court. That's what he looks like now. That's what he looked like before he was captured.
Jeez, man, he looks like he hasn't been fed in like the entire time he's been in captivity.
It's horrendous. Yeah, it looks like they've starved this man nearly to death. And they're doing this to almost every single prisoner from what we can see. Every single time a Ukrainian prisoner of war exchange happens, every single prisoner comes back looking like this. And a lot of them come back with broken arms. Some of them come back without certain parts. I can't even really describe what that is, but y'all can, of course, let y'all's imagination go wild, and you'll probably get the gist. It's been horrendous, and it's terrible to see that this poor man has been tortured and subjugated by the Russians in the prisoner of war camp, and it's only going to sadly be worse from here. And when you look at this man, remember that kind of suffering and this kind of torture that he's been living through ever since he's been a prisoner of war for over a year now is the same kind of torture and suffering that the average Ukrainian citizen would also be going under if this war was not fought and won by Ukraine. If Ukraine loses this war, and which they won't at this point, but if they do lose the war, many other Ukrainians, tens of thousands of them, are going to look a lot like this man by the end of it all. Or hell, they won't even be alive to see the end of it all. It's just saddening. It's saddening to see. I can't even describe how bad off this is, but it's horrendous from start to finish.
I'm seeing some folks say that's not the same guy. Are we sure that's the same guy?
It says right here from Ukrainian World, Russian POW in Ukrainian. Oh, sorry, correction, everyone. I actually misread this earlier. This is actually a Russian prisoner of war over here on this side. Let me make sure I'm getting that right again. Ukrainian hands on the left. So this is a Russian prisoner in Ukrainian hands that's been in captivity for about the same amount of time as a Ukrainian prisoner of war over here. Sorry about that. I misread that earlier for some reason, and I thought this was the same guy.
Even if this isn't a before and after, like there's no way the Ukrainian went in looking like that. So we do know that nonetheless, even though we don't know what he looked like before, he's in very foul shape now. And have we heard stories before of the prisoners going in, getting basically emaciated like this, not being fed, and then they come out of captivity back to Ukraine, and then they try to go back to living normally, and then some of them, pass on because they really can't reacclimate their bodies to, eating normally and stuff like that?
Yeah, we actually have. It's actually not a problem with eating normally. It's actually because their organs were so strained by the torture they pretty much went through that they usually just their bodies just give out because they were just going all out and burning themselves up to just try and survive being a captive in a Russian prisoner of war camp. And so when they return, no matter how good their treatment and rehabilitation and recovery is, usually their bodies are so shot by that point that their bodies just give out on them. And that's largely why a lot of Ukrainian prisoners of war that return end up dying, even once they're in a much better state, a way better state than they were in a prisoner of war camp. But it's absolutely sickening to see a picture like this and to know that Ukrainian prisoners of war are treated so poorly. And also, I'd like to make a correction again, because this is something I have to correct since I made a misstatement. This is not the same guy on the left side. This is actually a Russian prisoner of war in Ukraine. This is a Ukrainian prisoner of war inside of Russia. It's a side-by-side comparison, which is something I misread earlier on when I was putting together the news, because I actually was thinking, damn, this guy has really, been treated poorly. I mean, hell, it looks like they've even, damn scalped him nearly. But nevertheless, these are two entirely different guys. This is a Russian prisoner in Ukraine on the left. This is a Ukrainian prisoner in Russia on the right at the show trial today. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, and we're now going to be moving on over into something I didn't include on the map today because we had so many news markers. And also, I wanted to take the quick moment to be able to share with y'all something really cool that some of y'all may or may not know about this channel. The Lee Spring Army doesn't just exist here on the live stream and on the Enforcer channel on YouTube. We also exist on Twitter as well, and you can actually see our Twitter right here. Currently, we have 11.9 thousand subscribers, and right now, we are sitting almost on the cusp of 12,000 followers on Twitter. And of course, every single follower on Twitter, just like on YouTube, who is a subscriber, y'all are members of the Lee Spring Army and help to spread the message of the Enforcer channel and what the LSA does to everyone around the world for the most part. And today, we were followed by a very esteemed individual in a very high position in the Czech government. We were actually followed by Jan Lipovsky of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, or as they call it now, I believe it's Czechia, is the correct pronunciation. But absolutely incredible. I don't know if Jan watches our show or not, but if he does, this is a very high honor to know that folks like this are watching our channel and viewing our Twitter and find it worthwhile to publicly back the channel and say that it's a pretty good one worth following. We were very honored.
Folks, I was literally just scrolling through Twitter earlier doing my research for the stream and also the video, and I clicked on the followers tab just out of curiosity because I check like our follower count occasionally, and I saw the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Czech Republic following us. I was like, hey, look, Andrew, look who's following us. And we're like, what? No way. We're like, really? So we had to post about it because we're so honored that he followed us.
And I actually thought that Matthew was joshing me when he said it. He was like, dude, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Czechia, or the I still call them the Czech Republic, so sorry about that, but it's just been ingrained in my head. He was like, the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic just followed our Twitter. I was like, no way, you've got to be kidding. And then I looked at it, I was like, no way, that actually is the Foreign Minister of the Czech Republic. So that just blew me away. I was like, I was just absolutely floored. And we are entirely honored that Jan, along with so many others, watched this show. We're completely blown away that they are out there watching the show, and I welcome them to the Lee Spring Army now that they are a public member of this organization. Absolutely wonderful, and it's great to know that the Lee Spring Army and the Czech government, as far as the Minister of Foreign Affairs is concerned, is working side by side towards a common goal of supporting Ukraine. But moving on from that, of course, we posted a lot on Twitter, and sadly, a lot of this wasn't included on our stream today because there was so much of it. But if y'all want to see it, there's a link in the description below on the stream that will take you to our Twitter. All you have to do is click on the link and then go follow the Twitter that we have, and you'll be able to be notified of all of the posts that we make here. I know that many people are not fans of Twitter, now called X, but beyond that, I think that the priority is not to be a fan of Twitter, it's to make sure the Lee Spring Army is represented around every single corner of the internet that it officially exists in, both YouTube and Twitter. And so if y'all would help the Lee Spring Army to get over that goal of 12,000 followers on Twitter, and also be apprised of many news bulletins that we can't show here. But moving on from that, and scrolling on down, because I think I'm going in the right direction, Matthew, for the Taliban news. Nope, actually this is 11 hours ago. Maybe. Let's see. We're now back to the Su-35 getting shot down. We'll get to that later tonight. It was actually really good.
It's actually up a little bit. There it was. I think you skipped it. It was down a little bit.
Down a little bit.
Scroll down a tad, a little bit more. I think a little bit more. Not that one. Nah, not that one. Not that one. But check that one out.
Oh, look, here we go.
There
it's
it
right
is.
below that. But here we go. Here is a video clip of the Taliban's emissary, or well, not emissary. What should we call it? Envoy. We'll call it an envoy. This is a Taliban envoy that visited Moscow today.
Call it the gang. Can you believe that the Taliban are literally in the Kremlin being honored like government officials? Like, this is insane.
It's
they probably flew there on a private jet.
It's absolutely, like, crazy. Like, while I sit there and this suffering suckers. Yeah, I bet you heard that, because I was like, there's no way.
I did.
Yeah, but anyways, it's very interesting to see the Taliban in Moscow, because if y'all know the history, the Taliban at one point was actually called the Mujahideen, and even to this day, there's a large part of the Taliban that is pretty much a part of the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen were the original freedom fighters, terrorists. We called them freedom fighters because they were fighting against the Soviet Union. But they were the original kind of modern day terrorist group that you would see take over Afghanistan in 2020. What's bizarre is that at a time, they hated the Soviet Union, and we actually provided the Mujahideen with Western weaponry like the AIM-92 Stingers to be able to shoot down Soviet helicopters with. And now, 40 years on from that, after they were vehemently going against the Soviet Union and just trying to destroy the Russians inside of Afghanistan, of which, of course, they invaded Afghanistan, they then go and start talking with the Russians. It is such a weird world to see stuff like this. Just bizarre to the nth degree. But still, it's happening.
You know what's even worse, though, is even though this is insane to see terrorists in the Kremlin, basically like-minded people coming together with Putin, is they're actually doing a pretty smart thing here, because the Taliban has been well armed with U.S. equipment because we left it behind, and Russia's probably trying to access that stockpile that we left behind to use it against Ukraine and also us. So that's going to backfire on us big time, leaving that weaponry.
Well, not really that much. You know, like, what could they get out of that weapons pile that they could actually use?
Hell, we left a ton, man. And they can repair equipment. Like, if they send it to Russia, they can repair stuff that's out of commission.
And I doubt it. Which weapon system are you talking about?
All the stuff we left behind. We left behind Humvees, all kinds of equipment. Like, we left behind airfields full of stuff. Like, have you seen the photos from it?
I have, but the thing is, though, is that Russia doesn't have a continuous stream of supplies and parts for American vehicles. They have that for Soviet era and Russian vehicles, but it would be very hard for them to get parts to keep a Humvee running. You know, once a Humvee breaks down, that's pretty much it for that Humvee, and that's why a lot of Humvees, for example, in Afghanistan right now, are sitting exactly where they were left even years later, because they were largely broken down when they were being left, and even still, the Taliban has no idea how to repair the Humvees and get them running, and they also don't have enough spare parts to even keep them going. Some people, I saw Tech Guy 32 say attack helicopters. I believe some attack helicopters were left behind. I know that some Black Hawks were, because we saw them flying over Kabul as the U.S. forces were leaving, and they were flying the flags of the Taliban, so we know that those are there. But if any Apaches were left there, good luck. I mean, no one's going to get that thing running. Once a part breaks in that thing, that's it. There is no way to go and just find replacement parts sitting in a shelf somewhere to keep most of the stuff running. But nevertheless, the Russians could try and get a look at some of the older technology that we had and try and figure out how it works. But beyond that, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Because if it was that big of a deal, I'm pretty certain we would have gotten the stuff out of there. We just kind of decided it's more expensive to take it back than to leave it there, so just leave it there because nothing can really happen with it. And also,
Nah, I think that's what the outrage was about, because we left behind all that equipment that was stuff that we should have either scuttled or we should have taken it with us, and we left so quickly. We left everything behind. That was, I think everybody agrees that was a disaster all the way around.
well, you know, I can't really get into that much at all because that might be treading into territory that we don't enter. But still, very interesting to see the Taliban in Moscow, and of course, something that you can go to our Twitter and check out. Link in the description below, and you'll be able to see all of the amazing news that we put out there over the past day. Speaking of amazing news, meanwhile in the Kursk Oblast, a substation was blown away today by a Ukrainian attack, and we actually got to see a little bit of the fire burning on the substation. Take a look at that. And we can see their little substation boiling. And that's the end of the clip, but absolutely nice to see a warm, roaring fire. And we also got to see a video from the Ukrainians showing them attacking the substation with one of their drones. When you see it flying over, we see the camera go blank, and we can also see a little pop right down there on the substation, and another one showing them successfully hitting it and catching it on fire. At the moment, from what we can understand, the substation has been moderately damaged. It'll probably take a small while for the Russians to repair, but we don't really know the actual consequences at this moment of that attack. But still great to see the Ukrainians conducting one, and hopefully knocking out the energy grid was able to knock down some stuff that may be important to the Russian war effort, at least for a small while. Speaking of things that have been going on near the Ukrainian border, we also got to see in the Bryansk Oblast today that the Freedom of Russia Legion has appeared again, and they crossed the border a second time. 2 times in 2 days. We can see a picture of them holding up the flag of the Russian Volunteer Corps, which is actually separate from the Freedom of Russia Legion, but very interesting to see that they're once again causing another border incursion, and maybe we'll see that the Russians have to start moving more forces into the area of the border, so that way they can try and stop these attacks. From what we understand, it was a group of only about 50 guys, and this is the first time we've ever actually gotten an official head count on the Freedom of Russia Legion. It's now estimated to be around, and let me make sure I'm getting this number right. Let's see, 4, that would be... So this is about a company-sized unit. Just about, maybe. Well, actually, no, let me think about that. No, this is about a... Yeah, I actually think it would be about a company-sized unit, about 3 platoons or so of forces. But it's not incredibly large, actually. We actually believe that for most of this war, the Freedom of Russia Legion was larger than 50 guys. And from what we're understanding over these past 2 days, that is most of the Freedom of Russia Legion. There's not really many other members out there that are inside of Ukraine just keeping the fort down. So it's actually a lot smaller of a unit than we expected, with only 50 guys inside of it. But nevertheless, their small border incursions that they have been conducting over the past few months have certainly been taking the Russians' eyes off of the Ukrainian front lines and on into border security across the area of the Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk oblasts, which border Ukraine. It's somewhat of a serious concern because as the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps continue to create incursions across the border area and try and hold ground, this is showing to the Russian public that the government is weak, and the Russians have to force their own hand to respond and try and do something to mitigate the constant attacks and border incursions that the Freedom of Russia Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps are conducting. But nevertheless, absolutely wonderful to see. Hopefully they'll be able to divert Russian attention into these areas and make sure to keep the Russians' eyes elsewhere rather than where they actually matter, which is on the front lines inside of Ukraine. And moving on from that, now it's time for us to move on into a special bit of news tonight. Many of y'all may have been hearing about a development outside of Ukraine that is inside of Europe and may be leading to another large conflict. At least in the area of the Balkans. We don't know if this is going to expand into an international affair, kind of like the first Serbian war unfolded into, or more so the wars in the Balkans turned into. But it is a very interesting development that we've been hearing about today. Over the course of this entire war, relations in between the Kosovans and the Serbians have been in a state of almost complete deterioration. We've seen that the Kosovans arrested the president of Serbia's son due to reckless driving around the area of Kosovo, and then we saw some license plate disputes in between the Serbians and the Kosovans. We also saw the police of both sides pretty much getting into fistfights on the side of the road. Things have been deteriorating over the course of the Ukraine war in the background in between Serbia and Kosovo. Kosovo is backed up by the Western world and NATO for the most part. It is an ethnic minority within the area of Serbia, and the Serbians have a very big disdain for the Kosovans. It would take a lot to go into about why that's the case culturally and societally and everything as to why they hate each other so much. But the Kosovans and the Serbians really do hate each other. The Serbians tried to conduct a genocide against them in the 90s, and of course, due to massive amounts of NATO intervention, that was stopped a little bit. But of course, it still kind of went forward as well. And so trying to explain everything, I'm trying to figure out what to explain about this, because there is so much to unpack with the Serbians, the Kosovans, and everything that's going on in the Balkans. But nevertheless, we did see that today there is apparently a major development happening within the area of Serbia, as there has been a noted buildup of military forces from the Serbian armed forces on the border of Kosovo. According to Visegrad 24, the U.S. says that there is a Serbian military buildup along the border of Kosovo, which includes unprecedented forward deployment of artillery, tanks, and service members. And the U.S. is now calling on Serbia to withdraw those forces from the area. Now, usually we wouldn't give the time of day to something like this because it kind of happens. This stuff just kind of ebbs and flows. But what's important is that the United States, apparently with its intelligence sphere in the area, has picked up something on the radar that's very concerning, and I have a feeling it's the kind of equipment that's been moved into the area around Kosovo, which is artillery and tanks. Tanks and artillery are largely offensive weaponry used to push into an area and take it under heavy withering firepower. And based off of what we're seeing with the movement of artillery and tanks into this area, it does appear that the Kosovans' current plan is to prepare for war. Well, actually, the Serbians' current plan is to prepare for war against Kosovo. I also have to let y'all know that the Serbians largely consider themselves to be Russian aligned. The relationship in between Serbia and Russia is one in which no other country shares in Europe. In fact, it's probably a stronger relationship with the Russians than the Belarusians even have with the Russian Federation. It's a very odd history, and it largely goes back to the First World War, when many of y'all know that the Black Hand group of Serbia killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which of course kicked off the First World War. The Russians were actually the first to step up in the defense of the Serbians in that war, and that's largely one of the major catalysts of World War I as a whole. But since then, the Serbs and the Russians have had impressively well-connected ties to each other, and especially since the dissolution of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, Serbia has still constantly tried to strengthen its ties with the Russian Federation. In fact, going against what everyone else has done in the Balkans, they are not a member of NATO. or the European Union. They're not a member of either. And they're just hanging out down there, kind of doing their thing and largely being pro-Russian in almost every way. And so you can kind of see the lay of the land here. This is it can actually be considered a little bit of a spillover of the Ukraine war, as it's another conflict that has to do with the Russian Federation's backed countries like Serbia, and then the United States and the rest of the Western world, which of course backs the Kosovans. But moving on into what Kosovo said today, Kosovo made a direct request to the Western world, according to Feintuch's News. The Prime Minister of Kosovo has spoke to the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, where he requested increased assistance against Serbia's warfare plans. And this shows that Kosovo is already preparing for some kind of a war to break out in between them and Serbia. We don't know the exact force scale or size of the Serbian armed forces that have been deployed to the area of the Kosovan border, but we also know that the Kosovans are not well armed at all, if any. They largely don't have a massive military. They're going to be relying on the backing of Western nations and probably Western peacekeepers, such as NATO intervention, to be able to try and stop the Serbians from once again attempting to conduct another genocide onto them. So we'll be having to wait and see how this unfolds. I'll let y'all know that if this war actually does start inside of Serbia, and I'm sorry, for some reason I'm just absolutely slurring my speech tonight, probably because I had a Monster energy drink earlier today, and I also had nitro cold brew before the stream, so my heart is absolutely pounding to death.
That's not smart.
Not smart, but we had to do it. But still, it is something that we're probably going to see maybe boil over, and if it does, we will be trying to cover this news as well on the channel. We're going to try and figure out a way to include Serbian Kosovan news into our short war summaries. It probably won't become a major part of these streams, however, it'll probably be mostly a side note towards the later end of the stream, but still, a very interesting development and one that we'll be watching keenly, considering that it does appear that this time it is a real escalation and not one that's just being seen in a matter of words. Moving on from...
Now, one thing I don't understand, because I covered it earlier on the short war video, is I'm sure that Russia has a hand in causing the escalation on Serbia's side, but the part that I don't understand is what prompted this, because it takes two to tango. Serbia, I'm assuming, hasn't just brought all this equipment to the border for no reason whatsoever. And I really can't find a solid, concrete reason they've done so. So do you know why? Like, what's prompted this whole situation?
So what's prompted this situation is just kind of the constant deterioration that's been happening over the past year. Because you remember, Matthew, we covered a little bit of the news here where the president of Serbia's son was arrested by the Kosovans for reckless driving. And then after that, the Serbians revoked the ability for Kosovans to have Serbian license plates, which caused another huge row because that meant that Kosovans actually couldn't leave Kosovo and travel across the border, or Kosovans inside of Serbia couldn't travel back into Kosovo. So that created a massive row in between the two governments. It's largely stuff like that's been creating this tension right now. It's pretty silly. Honestly, we could probably name this war, if it does unfold, the license plate war, because it seems as though almost all of the tensions that would have led up to this war revolves entirely around the license plate situation that we saw unfold about a half year ago. But that seems to be the lay of the land right now as far as the story goes.
That's interesting. But yeah, the way it looks right now, the U.S. is extremely concerned about this for some reason, like you were saying. Like always, we're not getting the whole story, but with the amount of equipment that Serbia has deployed, it's kind of like that Russia situation when they did the exercises around Ukraine. Everybody kind of had an idea something was about to happen, but they weren't quite sure just yet. This looks like it could be almost a mirror effect of that whole situation.
Well, the reason why we're very concerned is because we have a pretty good grip on stability inside of the Balkans right now, but it is largely fragile. With most of the Balkan states, especially the ones in the former Yugoslavia, they could possibly start to destabilize if Serbia goes into a war. Because, you know, with a war, there's always the possibility that some rogue groups could get some guns, travel across the border, and then start doing things inside of Bosnia, Croatia, or Montenegro, and then start kicking things off there, where it starts to spread throughout the entire Balkans. Largely, what the United States wants to ensure is that there is stability in areas that matter. And the Balkans is actually an area that is starting to matter a lot more to the Western world, specifically US, British, German, French interests, your larger power players within Europe, because we're starting to see that this area is growing economically quite quickly and is starting to become a good place of trade for many of the larger nations. And so we want to ensure that there is a good level of stability in this area and that a war doesn't break out, because that could start to jeopardize all of those things and their continued growth. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from Serbia, and we're now going to be moving back into Ukraine and covering... Actually, you know what? We're going to cover something in Kyiv really quickly, because I saw this today, and it was really interesting. It was bizarre. I don't even know how to explain this. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. Some guy stole an entire Tor missile cell, and he just had it sitting in his garage, and the Ukrainians found it today, and of course arrested the guy, and then retrieved the Tor missiles. Here's a picture of the Tor missiles, well, actually a video more so, of them recovering the Tor missile battery. You can see the picture of the cell right there, with the missiles inside, and this man just had the thing sitting around at his house. He stole it from the Ukrainian army, and then just traveled off with it out here, and he's had it for almost the entire war, from what we understand.
That guy thought he was going to cash in at some point.
Dude, this guy sat there and saw money signs in that silo. He was like, oh man, I hit it big! And dude, I gotta say, this was insane. I've never seen anyone steal just a Tor missile cell, but he did, and it had 4 intact missiles inside of this thing.
What was the guy thinking? He was just going to, take it to a pawn shop and, pawn it or something and get money for it? Seriously, though, where was he expecting to sell it?
First, we go down to the port of Odessa, and then we line ourselves up with a very shady guy. He says he'll sell it to the Syrians for a little flat rate, and then I ship it down to Bashar al-Assad. He's probably thinking something like that, man. It's something like that. It had to been nefarious, because who the hell are you going to sell Tor missiles to? I think one of the few countries that uses the Tor is maybe Syria. I know that they use S-300s, don't know about the Tor. But absolutely nuts that this guy just had this crap around. But also, we don't really know where this was in Kyiv. It could have been really anywhere, because we didn't get an exact geolocation of this. Could have been out here in the suburbs. It looks like it mostly was somewhere out there in the suburbs. If you look at the pictures, it appears to be smaller suburban homes out here. Maybe down in this area. But still, very interesting nevertheless to see. And of course, there is always some slightly nefarious things going on all over the place. There are bad eggs. Even inside of Ukraine, there are bad eggs, and that's why the FSB is always constantly trying to crack down on crime inside of Ukraine and make sure to keep a pen on it. And, some people are going to say, oh, wait a minute, that sounds bad. No, because think about it, the FBI does the same thing in the United States. But still, it's great to know that inside of the center of Kyiv, things are apparently a lot better and a lot well under control. And really quickly, there's actually some really cool stuff to look at in the center of Kyiv. This is really the historical center of the city, and also probably one of the most expensive places to stay in Kyiv. I mean, hell, I looked at hotels here, and they were like $500 a night still. And that's wartime prices. Most hotels are like 30 to 40 bucks. But still, Matthew, it is a really cool place, especially on this street here, which is called Krishkatsi. Well, hang on, let me get that right. It is Hreshatik Street. Yeah, it's Hreshatik Street. And
that's like one of the main nice streets in Kyiv, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the main nice streets. And one of the cool things that's on it is the Bessarabian Market. It's a really cool market. Like, I was actually looking at this the other day, and it's just so neat. It's a huge market and mall inside of this thing. Of course, the buildings around it have been updated these days to just be super nice with neat little Airbnbs and apartments in them. And from what I've been able to find out, they cost a pretty penny. It's not cheap.
Wait, you can stay in an Airbnb next to the Bessarabian Market?
You can.
Was that the building to the left?
Yeah, that was actually one of the buildings to the left. Actually, it's most of them. And what's even crazier is that this area has really had a revival since this satellite picture was taken in 2018. I mean, hell, there's even a little pharmacy over here in this building right now. And it's just top notch. It really is. It's absolutely insane. But one thing that's really cool is that inside of the Bessarabian Market, just take a look at this thing. It's actually a huge tourist attraction for a lot of people who come to Ukraine, and you can tell why. It's super cool in this thing. It's like a mall. Like, look at that.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really neat, man. And, like, I was blown away seeing this. And the stuff in here, it looks good. I gotta say. Top-notch quality. Love to see it. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least about the center of Kyiv. It's a really cool place. Of course, quite expensive even at this point in the war, but nevertheless, it is largely held down considering that most of the government buildings are also very close to the center of Kyiv in this area, and of course it's well defended too. But with that, we're going to be moving on from the city of Kyiv, which is a very cool place. Maybe one day we'll be able to go over there and take a look at it after the war. You never know. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from Kyiv and on over into our location unknowns. And we actually have some pretty interesting location unknowns today. They're actually going to knock y'all socks off when y'all see them. But one thing I gotta say is that the live chat has been very interesting tonight. Not as fast as last night. Last night was a breakneck speed. It was 100 chats a minute all the way until we got to being able to talk about it. And so many of y'all have been saying very interesting things in the live chat tonight. Like Jared Foster just said, there's a great little mall in Boston. Looks just like this. And hell, it might be Ukrainian. That would actually be pretty cool to know if it had some like Ukrainian inspiration to it. And also, John Petrie said, it looks like an old train station. Believe it or not, it never was an old train station. Most of the train stations in the Russian Empire, because at this time when the trains were coming around, Ukraine was a part of the Russian Empire. Most of them were built and just kind of stayed where they were. And there wasn't really a lot of them either. The Russians were highly underdeveloped, especially compared to their peers at the time. So you didn't really see a lot of railroad stations. Really, where the Kyiv Central Station is right here, that is largely where the first train station in Kyiv ever was. The Bessarabian market was purpose-built as a market. But what's even cooler, really quickly talking about Ukrainian markets, because this will probably blow you all away, is that during the time of the Soviet Union, and you're going to be blown away by this, Matthew, Odessa was the largest port in the entire Soviet Union.
I believe it.
It's insane. Like, I didn't know that. And when I heard that, I was like, what? It's not St. Petersburg? And no, it wasn't. It was actually Odessa the entire time. And what's really cool is that there is this place here called the Potemkin Stairs. And it got its name because this is kind of close to where a massacre happened in Odessa during the 1905 revolution that kind of revolved around the battleship Potemkin, which I believe was moored at Odessa at the time, but still a really interesting little bit of history. And also, if I remember correctly, that is the Duc de Richelieu, which is a French duke. So I don't know what his statue actually is here for. If any of y'all could let me know, I would love to know.
He's Richie Lou. That's enough reason already. He's he's Duke Richie Lou.
Dude, you said that so southern-like. It's Richelieu. You were like Richie Lou, Richie Lou. Come here, boy.
That's my boy Richie Lou right there.
Man,
that's my statue.
That's my boy Richie Lou. And also, really quickly, damn it, man, I think they got rid of it. Hang on. Did they? Oh my lord, are you kidding me? I think they got rid of the fort that was here. Because back in the day, Odessa was actually founded in its modern form in the 1790s, I think 1794. The actual Greek city of Odessa was somewhere further up here towards the area of Krishnivka, I believe, if I'm remembering the story correctly. But there is actually the largest market in Europe, and I think it might be this one, the Privaz Market. And I think it is. Let me check. Let's see, information about this place. Sprawling market. Yep, this is it. The Privaz market is actually the largest of its kind in all of Europe. It is an endless market of everything that you can imagine, both to eat, both to wear, anything you want, it's for sale. And it's massive. This thing, I believe, is about 6/8 of a mile long. And it's just huge. It's like the Goom store of Odessa, and that's a pretty big store inside of Moscow, but still, a really cool one. And look at those fresh cuts of meat. Man, look at that.
Wow, they got the meat just sitting out right there on the counter.
Man, Arby's, we have the meats. Sponsored by BMW, apparently. There's a BMW bag in the middle of the butcher shop. But anyways.
Oh no.
And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that neat little marketplace. And, let's see. Wait a minute, hold up. Who's saying that? What you mean by that? Oh, you got it. I was about to be like, what you mean by that? But anyways, we've got a whole bunch of interesting stuff to talk about. And so with that, take it away, Matthew.
All right, so moving into our first poll and question segment, our very first poll says, do you think the Serbia, like the Walmart, will invade Kosovo, and is Russia likely involved with the escalation? 60% said yes and yes. 20% said no and yes. 12% said yes and no. And 8% said no and no. And for me, I would have to say that I don't want to be a fearmonger. That's the first thing I want to make clear. but it does appear that something is going to happen. It could end up being a full-out invasion. That might be a stretch, though, because we're still a little bit with the only preliminary information at the moment. But with the mass deployment we're seeing of military equipment, tanks, and artillery, for them to do that and not actually do something to Kosovo or invade it, that would be a interesting situation. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to attack or do something to it. So I would probably say yes and yes, because I think Russia probably has a hand in stoking the escalation itself. But that is my speculation. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the Russians probably do have a good bit to deal with the escalation here. And also I saw someone say, what are you talking about? This wouldn't expand into the rest of the Balkans. They're NATO countries. I don't think you know this, but whenever there's a war happening on anyone's border, regardless of what alliance they're in, it brings problems. I don't know if you've seen this, but there are Russian drones that are blowing up in Romania at a fairly consistent basis at this point. Although it's a NATO country, it borders Ukraine, and so there's the possibility that trouble could reach across the border and into your country. That's largely why you want to avoid wars wherever you can, especially ones that have to do with your alliance. But moving on to that, I would have to say that the Russians certainly have a role to play inside of what's going on in Serbia. I would have no doubt about it, and hopefully we can put a handle on things before it gets way out of sorts. One thing we know for certain is that the Russians won't be able to support the Serbians in any large way, considering the Serbians are landlocked, and any Russian support would have to fly in over a NATO country, which would probably be denied. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I know. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And our next poll says, do you think the Ukrainian paramilitaries are going to make these border incursions a routine event? 58% said yes, and they will destabilize Russia. 20% said yes, but it's just for propaganda. 12% said unsure, and 10% said no, it is isolated incidents. And I gotta say that while it's good that these paramilitary groups are going into Russia and causing chaos, if they don't stay there for longer than a few hours, it's really not going to accomplish very much. It might have the effect of making the Russian public angry, perhaps. But if they were to go in and stay there for a few days, or at least try to occupy border towns within Russia, I think that would be an effective strategy. But as they're operating right now, I don't see that really making a major difference, which is a shame because they do have the potential to go in there and make a change if they wanted to. But it doesn't look like they're ready to commit just yet. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that what happened? Reread the line.
And it said, do you think the Ukrainian paramilitaries are going to make these border incursions routine?
Maybe. We thought they were going to do that back when they pushed into Shebekino in the Belgrade Oblast, and then they kind of went quiet for a few months. So to be honest, I'm going to have to say I'm somewhat unsure on that. I don't really know what their next moves are going to be, because they're doing them quite frequently over the past 2 days, one incursion each day, but we don't know how long they're going to be keeping that up and if that's something they plan on expanding. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that being said, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that's our last poll question for now. So we are moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $200 donation from channel legend Avir Anthony.
No
and thank
way.
you very much, Avir, for the largest support of the night, and big thanks for that. And he says, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, we appreciate all that you do, and we female soldiers love your depictions of the war, especially impressions. And take a question from the chat.
Hey,
Nice.
And thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Bear. That just blows us away, and we're just incredibly appreciative of your massive generosity there and helping the channel to keep running, and doing a lot more than that, really. But still, thank you so much once again, and thank you for appreciating all we do. We try our best to make sure that this stream runs like clockwork 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering all of the news that there is out there that we can possibly throw into the stream about Ukraine and really the fight in between the Russian world and the Western world. And I've got to say that I'm entirely honored to know that you have been here for so long, Affair, and of course been watching this channel almost since the 4th day or even earlier than that. And now tonight, you're here again and also helping the channel to keep running. And thank you so much for saying that the female soldiers love our depictions of the war and the impressions. We try, well, actually, we're very different than most YouTube channels that cover the war. I think we're really the only one who covers the war like this, because one thing that's important to me is that people are able to pay attention to the war for a long time. And one thing that everyone knows is that emotional burnout is a thing, and emotional burnout sets in a lot quicker when it is a sob story the entire time instead of making it something that people can bear and tolerate. It's a very deliberate decision on my end to make sure that when we're covering this news, it always sounds optimistic and upbeat, because that helps people to be able to pay attention to the war, and no matter how brutal it is, it's not emotionally burdensome to the point that people just check out and leave. And I think that's a very important thing to make sure that people can continue to support the war, because if anyone would know how brutal the war is, having seen every single video, and especially a lot of them that have never made it on stream, I would say that just about 60% of the videos I watch don't make it on air. I just watch them, witness what's in them, and then move on. But knowing how bad it is, it's very important, and especially in my mindset, to make sure that y'all don't really have to watch that stuff and have that emotional baggage, and that y'all can just support the war nonstop and continue to watch it and pay attention to it without it wearing you down. And that's why we really present this news like this. Beyond that, we would probably be a sobbing, crying show like every other one, nearly. But still, thank you also for enjoying the impressions. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. Oh, man. Oh, man. The other day, oh, man, someone tried to burn me. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I got served at a restaurant the other day. Oh, man, the guy gave me some papers to sign. Oh, man, I beat him up. Oh, man, like a Chad. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, we're racked up with testosterone. Oh, man, you know what I mean, Matthew? Oh, man. But
Man, I'm trying to figure out what you mean. I don't know what you mean.
Man, you know what I mean. We were joking about it before the stream went live.
Oh, you mean that?
Yeah, you know it. But still, but still, thank you so much for the support of Bear. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you for being a longtime member of this Lee Spring Army, and we will make sure to take a question from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And you know, when you just did that, you went, oh. That reminded me of back in the day when we used to say, Pucon.
Oh, dude, where's he been? Dude, I remember him from Pucon in Argentina. No, not Argentina. Damn it, Chile. Where the hell is he? You know, he hasn't. I don't think he's been around for a minute. Hopefully, he's doing okay.
He was down there with the military. That was very interesting looking.
Geschnick
Yeah, yep, that was him.
And so with that, we are on to the live chat, but I don't really know how to transition from that. So let's get to the live chat.
All right, the live chat question goes to Magic Forest, who says, is there any way to stop the Balkans from exploding?
Yes, with immediate and swift NATO intervention, if it appears that it's going to be going into a war. The war will be inevitable if we have to intervene. That means that we see no other option than to get involved. The Russians will largely be out of the picture, so while Serbia is a Russian-aligned country, we won't really have to worry about Russian intervention or involvement much. So we can probably go and fix the situation before it gets out of hand, or we could start to threaten the Serbians with military reprisal if they go through with their offensive plans against the Kosovans, which will probably be enough of a deterrence to be able to stop them from really doing anything. So with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and I have to reiterate this again because I have seen a couple of people in the live chat saying, what? Oh, the former Yugoslavian countries are NATO countries, except for Serbia. What are you talking about? And what I'm talking about with the war moving on outside of Serbia is that with wars going on in the general area, there's always the chance for a little thing to happen here and there across the border. You know, that's kind of why you see that while the Baltics are completely cut off from Ukraine geographically, they're in the other northern part of mainland Europe. There is still a lot going on up there because of the war happening in Ukraine. Massive NATO buildups, massive observations across the border, AWACS aircraft are airborne in this area all the time, observing what the Russians are doing a lot more frequently than they once were. Stuff like that happens because of wars. It affects an entire region whenever a war breaks out, even if it's well contained. And even if the Serbians and the Kosovans kept it within their borders, there probably would be the occasional instance where border guards got into a clash at the Bosnian-Serbian border, or maybe with Croatia and Serbia because tensions would be running high and the stress would be unbelievable in that region. It's something that you always have to pay attention to. You can't let wars happen. You can't. Like, if there is a inherent strategic interest in the Balkans that NATO and the European Union has, And so you largely want to make sure that a war doesn't happen at all, instead of letting one begin and then act like the consequences are going to be small. Because when the war in Ukraine started, we went, oh, no Russian bombs will ever hit NATO territory. It'll stay entirely within Ukraine. And now we see that Shahed 136s are constantly missing their targets around the Danube River area and are exploding on Romanian territory, which technically could invoke Article 4. You could entirely make that argument every single day. It's just that we don't. And so it's always important to remember, when a war breaks out, there is certainly the possibility that it could escalate to start enveloping neighboring countries like the former Yugoslavian countries, like Romania, Bulgaria, Northern Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro, those are former Yugoslavian countries, or Hungary. It could include any of them, and they're all NATO members, so it's a pretty bad recipe and a pretty bad situation to get involved in. So we generally want to stop them before it even begins. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and kind of why it could spill over into neighboring countries. But still, thank you once again for the massive amount of support affair. I hope we were able to answer that live chat well, and thank you for being an old guard of the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Gary Robbins, who's also a longtime channel viewer as well, and channel legend. He puts in a $100 donation, and thank you very much, Gary, for that very generous support. And he says, again, thank you all for what you do. And as a lawyer, class of 76, he says, I'm curious what your most and least classes are in law school, and go get them. Now, I'm guessing he meant to ask what is my least and most favorite classes. My least favorite thus far is legal writing. My most favorite is probably torts. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would largely have to agree with Matthew on the least favorite class, and I want to say this because I don't know if any of our professors are watching. The professors are great. They teach the material well. It's just that the actual things you have to do in the classes suck sometimes, and LLR is certainly one of those classes. LLR, that stands for legal reasoning and something else. I forgot what the rest of it is.
Lawyering.
Yeah, legal reasoning, lawyering. It's kind of like soldiering or whatever, it's kind of like that adjective, or verb. But still, that's probably my least favorite class, because I've got to try and figure out in between right now and Sunday at midnight how to write up a 7 to 9 page memo and then have that thing turned in, because I've only gotten about a page done because I've been so busy through the weekdays. So I'm really going to have to just put my nose to the grindstone and get this thing knocked out over the next 48 hours or so. So that's probably a tough one for me. The least favorite because of that as well. But my favorite one would actually probably be contracts. Contracts is really interesting to me because the professor has a very good way of presenting it. It's actually a interactive class, unlike some. Very engaging because of that, and also, not to say anything bad against some professors who don't really engage or interact with the class a lot, some of them have very good vocational skills, very good speaking skills, and they're able to make the content interesting even if it isn't interactive and draw your attention in because of that. But I still find contracts to probably be the most interesting because the cases are just very unique, and also it's just cool to me for some reason. I don't really know. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Gary. I hope that does answer the question on my end. And we are going to go and get them. And we're going to get them all. I'm telling you. Oh,
Go get them, pal.
What do you mean, Jack? We're going to get them. The top 1% of this country owns half of this country's wealth. I gotta tell you, you never seen anything like it. It's huge, believe me. It's absolutely phenomenal. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Gary Robbins. I don't know why I had to go through all of those voices right there, but thank you so much once again for helping the channel to keep on running. And I hope I was able to address your question incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the location unknowns.
And look, somebody knows me in the chat. I saw a poll say, I bet Enforcer Matt has his homework done. And you know me, I got it done already. It's already done.
Man, he's trying to flex on me. Yeah.
Man, I am a little bit. I get my work done way ahead of time because I'm always paranoid that I'll not be able to understand something at the last second. So mine's 90% done, so I'm thankful for that. But with that being said, we're moving on to our last super chat of the segment, and this one goes to Jesus UCSB. He makes a return.
The
Channel
LSA
Legend
tanker.
is back. And it is the LSA tanker. He puts in a $100 donation, which is extremely generous. And also, it's good to see once again Jesus. He says, Hola, this is the LSA tank commander. All stations, this net report. I'm so happy the Abrams from my Vilsec, Germany are in Ukraine. And Viva Ukraine, USA and Mexico, and LSA homie.
And LSA, LSA. And thank you so much for the support, Jesus, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Great to have our LSA tank commander in the chat tonight. Of course, channel legends are abound tonight, just in massive numbers, and we love to see that you're here too, Jesus UCSB, the LSA tank commander. I'm happy to see that the Abrams are in Ukraine as well. They finally made it there. We also have a video that came out from United 24 today. So we're, of course, going to be showing that here in the location unknowns here in a second, which is perfect timing because we're about to be moving right into that. But absolutely incredible, and hopefully we'll see the Abrams perform above and beyond on the battlefield. Far exceeding our expectations, hopefully. But, of course, I always have to put it out there that y'all should expect as a norm that a vehicle will be destroyed, a tank will be destroyed. The Abrams probably will end up a burning ball of flame somewhere out there on the battlefield. One of them will. So if we don't see one get destroyed for, months, consider that a miracle and count the blessings, because usually with this kind of war, with this kind of intensity on every part of the front line, you could probably expect that even an Abrams, like the Challenger or the Leopard, will be lost at some point. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus. And also, Slava Ukraini, God bless America, and Viva Mexico. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that further well, and it's amazing to have you here tonight. And speaking of having you here tonight, Jesus UCSB, we're going to be moving on into those location unknowns and covering our first location unknown, which is directly what you were talking about. The M1 Abrams is in Ukraine. And so, without further ado, here is the clip. Let me make sure to get this thing up here.
No Nike. He's got a button-up shirt today. What do you know?
Man, he's got a button-up shirt, looking fresh like the fruits at the best Arabian market. But anyways, here's a clip.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky just returned from the United States of America, having had what he called a very productive week.
Продуктивний був тиждень. Дуже. Ми маємо багато хороших оборонних та інших рішень. Оборонний пакет від Сполучених Штатів.
At the same time, summer is ending in Ukraine. Temperatures are set to drop, and with that comes the rain. That means the window before what is known as bezdorija, or roadlessness, is closing. So, welcome to Talking Tactics, where this week it's about Zelensky's visit to the US and the latest developments concerning military aid, equipment, and the front line. While on his trip, Zelensky secured a military aid package worth $325 million. It contains additional ammunition for high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, Avenger air defense systems, 50 caliber machine guns to counter Russian UAVs, 155mm artillery rounds, including cluster munition used, for example, by the Paladin that were also delivered to Ukraine, tube-launched, optically tracked, wire-guided missiles, or TOW, Javelin and 84 anti-armor systems, over 300 million rounds of small arms ammunition, 59 light tactical vehicles, and more. Zelensky also announced the, quote,
Є історичне рішення Америки про спільне виробництво зброї та оборонні системи, зокрема і ППО. Це те, що було абсолютно фантастикою ще нещодавно, але стане реальністю.
Perhaps the most important news of the week was this. Upon his return, Zelensky congratulated the recently appointed Defense Minister Rustem Umerov, by the way the first Muslim and Crimean Tatar minister ever in Ukraine, for announcing the arrival of the first US-made M1A1 Abrams main battle tanks. Now, this might cause you to raise your eyebrows. Weren't those tanks promised in January? Aren't already German Leopards and British Challengers fighting on the battlefield? Yes and yes. But there are a couple of good reasons for this delay. Number one, the M1A1s, which as you can guess by the name are older than the more modern M1A2s, were refurbished and upgraded so that the tanks received by Ukraine will, this is according to General Pat Ryder, the Department of Defense press secretary, have a very similar capability to the superior M1A2s, including advanced armor and weapon systems like a mounted .50 caliber heavy machine gun. The second reason is that at the beginning of September, Ukraine had requested the Pentagon to extend the training of Ukrainian personnel on the Abrams to ensure their proper abilities in handling the tank before sending the men into battle. Anyway, 31 US M1A1 Abrams battle tanks will soon be visible on the battlefield. 31 is the size of a typical Ukrainian tank battalion, by the way. Let's take a closer look at the tank. The basic idea for the Abrams emerged from a joint project with Germany. Together, the two countries wanted to develop the main battle tank 70. As you know, that never happened and the project died.
Man, this thing, I gotta tell y'all, this thing is actually kind of crazy because a lot of the modern Western main battle tanks that you see in the world, like the Leopard 2 and the M1 Abrams, took a lot of inspiration from this thing. It's largely the grandfather of most modern main battle tanks, and it's a really weird one when you look at it. It has a 20mm autocannon that's attached to, I believe, the commander's turret over here on the left side, and it also has a whopping, I believe it was a 155mm main gun. So this thing has about the same, well, it is the same caliber as your M777 or your Paladin's main gun used for artillery. This was supposed to be a main battle tank, so really bizarre one, but still a really cool tank.
And while Germany went on to revive the idea some years later and develop the Leopard, the project was revived stateside when the US sought to replace its aging M60 Patton tanks in the late 70s. In 1980, the US Army selected Chrysler Defense, later known as General Dynamics Land Systems, to develop the prototype. This marked the beginning of a tank that would redefine armored warfare. The M1A1 Abrams entered service in the United States Army in 1985. Since then, it has undergone several upgrades and improvements to maintain its superiority on the modern battlefield. Main characteristics: firepower. The M1A1 is equipped with a 120mm smoothbore cannon, capable of firing a variety of rounds, including depleted uranium ammunition that's heading to Ukraine. We made a video on why this kind of ammunition is so controversial but also important. You can check that out. Engine. The tank is powered by a Honeywell AGT 1500 gas turbine engine, producing around 1,500 horsepower. This engine allows the M1A1 to achieve impressive speeds, around 72 km/h max depending on the surface and terrain, and maneuverability despite its considerable weight. A gas turbine engine is multi-fuel, meaning it can run on almost anything that burns, diesel, kerosene, or petrol, but it does differ quite a bit from a standard diesel engine used in most tanks. That was a point of concern for many, but up until now, Ukrainians haven't had that much of a problem adapting to different weapon systems. Also, the Soviet T-80 has a gas turbine engine, so it's not something the tank mechanics here are totally unfamiliar with. Protection. The tank's composite armor, including depleted uranium layers, provides unmatched protection against a wide range of threats, including armor-piercing rounds. It also features NBC, so nuclear, biological, or chemical protection systems for crew safety. Mobility. The Abrams is extremely mobile thanks to its advanced suspension system and powerful engine. Its operational range on a single tank of fuel is approximately 450 kilometers, but of course that varies depending on what type of ground you're driving on.
It's a long distance tank. It's for road trips.
Like how big's the fuel tank on this thing? Because surely it guzzles gas like crazy with an engine that large.
I think it's like several hundred gallons. I think it's like 400 gallons maybe. I'd have to go, one second, let me go pull that up. How big is Abrams fuel tank? Fuel tank. And let's see what the answer is. 504.4 US gallons.
Good Lord, that's hauling a lot of fuel then.
Man, that's a small swimming pool.
Yeah, really.
Combat history. The Abrams made its combat debut in Operation Desert Storm, also known as the Gulf War. It played a pivotal role in the liberation of Kuwait from Iraqi forces. The Abrams was again deployed during the invasion of Iraq in 2003. It's the first time it was battle-tested so intensely in an urban environment, not only against the Iraqi army, but also against fighters of the rising insurgency, for example in battles against the pro-Iranian Jaish al-Mahdi. It also saw some action in Afghanistan and is deployed by several other nations around the globe, like Saudi Arabia. Now, what change could or can the tank bring on the battlefield in Ukraine? According to the Institute for the Study of War and other sources, it is confirmed that Ukrainian troops have breached Russian defense positions west of Verbove. And by breach, we mean that they have managed to breach the feared anti-tank ditches west of the little town and brought their armored vehicles into battle for the lines behind. Now, this doesn't mean that the road to Crimea is open and it's an easy ride from here. To be honest, it's far from that. But it does mean Ukraine is one significant step closer to reaching Tokmak, which is a heavily fortified and strategically important town. Now, the battle for the city will be a critical one, and the Abrams, whose gas turbine engine is known to be pretty quiet for a tank, if you didn't know, it has been nicknamed Whispering Death, could pose an advantage when battling it out in an urban environment. Still, we mustn't forget that we're talking about 31 tanks, not 3,100, and that no tank, no matter how good, is a magic weapon. The fight ahead is still long and tough. Anyway, thanks for watching Talking Tactics. That's it for this week. Please hit like and subscribe. You can also follow our channel on Telegram to always get the latest news from Ukraine.
And of course, That's the end of the clip, but another incredibly good one from United 24. Their video and editing skills are, of course, very good, and of course, great to know that they are out there continuing to help support the Ukrainian government with the war effort. You can actually find a link in the description below that will take you directly to the United 24 website, and you can go and support them directly there any time of the week. Moving on from that and into the next one, we got to see something else that was seized by Ukrainian police today that will kind of make your head turn. These are explosive reactive armor tiles that you're looking at right there. You wouldn't believe it, but these are being used by a Ukrainian farmer to cook food for his livestock.
Really?
Yeah,
Cook
it's not
food for the livestock.
They're not going to blow up or anything on him, but still, it's a little weird to use ERA tiles to cook food for livestock. And I don't know what kind of livestock he has. Apparently, they're eating gourmet. But
Really? Like, who's cooking food for cows? Like, I've never heard of that.
man, I'm going to be cooking up that filet mignon. You know what I mean?
That's cannibalism. Good
Man, I'm
lord.
telling- man, we're going to be like Hannibal Lecter up in here with those cows, man. We're going to be sitting there. Have you ever eaten brain lamb or whatever that guy said? You know. But anyways, very, very weird. But still, the police seized it today, so this guy is not going to be having fun in the sun anymore, cooking with his ERA tiles, but really bizarre. And I don't even know how in the world this guy would get his hands on these, but he was actually, it says, authorities in the Russian-occupied part of the Kherson Oblast reportedly confiscated 38 blocks of explosive reactive armor from a farmer who was using them to cook food for livestock. So, don't really know how the guy got his hands on them. They look pretty clean, actually, probably because they've been sitting in boiling water for a good bit, but just bizarre from beginning to end. Moving on from that and into the next bit, we also got to see some Ukrainian soldiers hopping on top of the BMP-1. Same song, 583rd day of the war. You gotta love it. They're hopping on top of the BMP right now. Look at them climb up there. I see him tossing a book bag up there. Looks like this man's going to school. He's going to be teaching the Russians how to subtract themselves from the equation. And we can see them
Oh, man.
climbing
That was a
up
good
onto
one.
the back of the BMP, but really nice to see and really cool to see one of the workhorses of the Ukrainian army, just like the caption says. Moving on from that, we also got to see a picture of a British Sea King in service with the Ukrainian army. Not really a lot to say, but of course neat to see. Moving on from that and into our last bit of location unknown news, we also got to see the Russian casualty report for the day, and one Bobcat skid steer was lost.
They got one. We're lucky to have one today because we didn't have any yesterday, I don't think. Or did we?
I think we had two.
Oh, we did? I just forgot then. Whoops.
Man, but one Bobcat skid steer destroy. Yeah. And also the losses were pretty good in every other category. Oh, hold up. Did you see that the chat just disconnected? And then it successfully
Not
connected
for me.
again. Dude, what the hell is going on around here? Anyways, 340 Russian soldiers were knocked out over the past 24 hours, along with 10 armored personnel carriers, 21 supply trucks, 8 tanks, 34 artillery pieces, 34 drones, an MLRS, and an anti-aircraft warfare system. Overall, they doing pretty good for themselves, and I hope to see that the Ukrainians can continue to keep the losses this high. Moving on from that, and now of our location unknowns, it's time for us to move to the northern front and into our first clip, showing the 5th Airborne attacking some Ruski. Here's the clip. When you hear the action music playing, as one does see, we now see them firing the RPG, tossing it. After a month of being here, the enemy came close. They were 1 or 2 such times in all because we would pour into them with either artillery or other firepower. And we can see the other firepower right there going to work. We destroyed a couple, 4 or 5 tanks, a couple of BMPs. You can see one of them toasting right there. Well, normally they storm with infantry groups. Maybe they can use a fire team that... Maybe they can use a fire team that ahead of time goes to some firing position and begins provocations to divert attention in their direction. We're now seeing them dropping some bomblets onto some pesky Russians. Their groups are 10 people primary, so normally 3 to 4 wounded, and 1 to 2 of them that take naps. And Russians love naps. Special forces have worked once or twice, but normally Z is storming. That's for sure. Man, and call them storming because they be storming up those Zs. Of course, our air reconnaissance is working and helps us very much. They go and find them, and during our actions of our subdivides, everyone fights, from squad commanders to higher commanders, and even higher commanders. I was the commander under New Bakhmut when I twisted my leg and also received shrapnel in it. We had a night operation, so we were attacking at night. The opponent and he took our positions. And during 9 hours of fighting, we beat them out, took their cards. They stole their damn credit cards. I don't know what that means, but they stole their cards. Plus, we took an assload of weapons, and after that, it's time to dig. There were about 3 to 5 persons we need to defend. If not us, then. And that's the end of the clip. But really cool to see the 5th Brigade up there at work, and wonderful to know that they've been knocking around the Russians a little bit. Moving on from that into the next clip, we also got to see a short little look at a Ukrainian field kitchen. Look, a proper Ukrainian field kitchen. And man, they serving them up. They giving them a little dollop, a little wallop here and there.
What are they eating? Like, what's on the menu? What is this?
Man, it looks like some rice, some
It's
schlau,
borscht.
some soup. Man, they eating well. That's the answer. We don't know what they're eating, but they're eating well, man. Getting a little bit
You know,
of,
if the food's in a Home Depot bucket, it's about to be busting.
man, they're also getting a little bit of that kava over there in the corner. Man, you know they're gonna be loving it, man. They're gonna be having a great day today. The sun is shining, the food's good, the Russians are running. It's a great day to be on the battlefield. And so with that, moving on down further south and on to our next clip, we also got to see an FPV drone hitting Russians in this area as well. There's the FPV drone, and we can see that apparently it's like a boot because it has a steel front to it. And we can see it coming on down. Albeit, it's a BMP-1, actually. Oh my goodness. Think about the monetary losses in that BMP.
Oh, he's
and
running
there he
off the road. That's a shame.
And that thing is knocked out for good. It's not going to have a massive explosion or anything. It's just going to burn on out. But that is certainly a loss for the Russians today in that BMP. Moving on from that and on down into our next clips, we got a decent amount of them from Bakhmut today. From what I understand, there weren't any major frontline advances in the area. Let me refresh and check that out just to make sure. And it actually looks like the frontline map hasn't even been updated yet today. But still, moving on from that and into the videos that we got from Bakhmut, we got to see that the Russians were hit hard in this area. And check it out. This is actually near the eastern side of Soledar.
And also, I got confirmation out of the chat from Arnie YDT that was borscht in the pot.
Man, love to hear
Could
it.
I have some borscht, please? And one Porsche on this side, please.
I'd be sipping up these borscht while I'm driving in my Porsche. But anyways, we can see the
yes.
Russians sitting inside of their little foxhole here trying to hunker down because it is raining, and it's raining lead. And we can see it dropping another one on them. Oh, that was a little closer. Someone needs to whip out an umbrella. Oh, man. I'm telling you, this guy, he gets no respect around here. Whenever he's around, it rains on him. And it's not the normal kind of rain. It's that mean kind of rain. Boom, chicka. Look at that.
Oh, dear. That was like a vanishing act almost.
Yeah, look at that. The whole place disappeared.
Call this man Houdini or something because he's getting up out of here. Uh-oh. The magic trick didn't work that well.
They're like, we got to get out of here, man. And so now they're running into a destroyed village house. They can't find
And
us
that's
here.
how Houdini came to an abrupt end.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Hang on. Was that their house? Is that your house?
Is this your house?
Dude, I literally pulled a King Charles. Is that your house? Is that your house? Dude, you know, if the Czech foreign minister watches this show, it's possible, okay, hear me out. It's possible that King Charles has actually seen the show in passing. Who knows? But anyways,
King Charles, I don't know about that.
probably not. I'm doubting that heavily.
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding with that. I know.
What
he
is
doesn't
this
watch
garbage show that they're running here?
Oh, these stupid, incredulous boys. I can't stand their asses. That's probably what he'd say. But anyways, we can see them bombing out the rest of the village where the Russians are hiding. Of course, wonderful to see. And man, that's right on their house. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But I love to see it. Great to see the Ukrainians, of course, doing some good work on the eastern end of Soledar and making sure to keep the Russians' heads down or out. Well, not down or out. It's more like down or gone. But moving on from that, we also got to see a BTR on the move. And I know y'all love to see BTRs moving it. All right, we're going to be muting that, but we can see them all with AK sitting up here enjoying their little ride through the sunset. See them talking. We can see all of them saw the camera. They're posing for the camera, doing it for the Vine. And, that kind of looks like it's a BTR-4. Because it has the BTR-4's cannon, and it looks like it may have the turret as well. But at the same time, it looks like it's a very old BTR chassis with not really a lot of upgrades to it, or the hull. But still, really nice to see. Moving on from that, and on into our next clip a little bit further down in Bakhmut towards the southern front, we got a view of Klishkivka again today as Ukrainian soldiers were walking through it and just filmed the general area. And also, I see a lot of people jumping in on the joke. Damnable Yankees. But anyways, we can see them walking past. We can see a couple of knocked out Ukrainian MRAPs, but of course did their job well, saving the crew.
Сука. Йдемо додому пішком. Не доїхала 20 метрів.
See them still moving in.
Залупа.
And with that, that's the end of the clip. But absolutely wonderful to see that these guys are doing their thing. Of course, moving on into the village of Klishkivka. And great to see that those MRAPs clearly did survive their hits well enough for their crews to escape, which is what the MRAPs are designed to do. But still, moving on from that little clip, I'd also like to say really quickly, because this is actually, I believe, a bit of a misnomer about the British royal family. A lot of people think that all of them don't serve because someone said that some members of the family may have watched because, you know, they served in the military. If I'm correct, King Charles military service, I believe he served in the Royal Navy.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that really kind of like symbolic though? Because they don't really like get in there and do the work of the normal military man, do they?
What? No, are you kidding? So Prince William, who is now the Prince of Wales, which is just bizarre when you think about it, because Prince Charles was the Prince of Wales. Well, King Charles was the Prince of Wales forever. Prince William actually was a sea rescue pilot in one of those Sea Kings, like we just saw up here, and I'll show you that Sea King. This may have actually been one that was flown by Prince William, but it's the exact same kind. It's the rescue helicopters of the British Army, and so he operated one of those. I think he actually was in the Royal Navy operating one of those. Prince Harry, or, you know, I don't really know what the position on him is now. I don't know if he's a prince still or not. But he actually was an Apache gunship pilot, and he actually served in Afghanistan, I believe in the Helmand province, and actually saw combat, actually was out there fighting against the Taliban. So they actually do serve in frontline positions. That's largely a thing that the royal family does. And according to what I could find, Prince Charles did serve in the Royal Navy and the Air Force from 1974 to 1991. So they all do have military service. It's pretty much a requirement in the royal family that you actually have to serve in the military at some point, one or another. You don't really get a choice in it, I believe. But still,
Interesting.
Still really cool to know and really cool to always think about. Because whenever you, and this is something I have to say that is well deserved by the British royal family, whenever you see them at official occasions, like for example the state funeral for Queen Elizabeth or the coronation, you'll usually see them wearing military uniforms. And those military uniforms aren't like a dictator's where they just, you know, wear one and they throw on like a million medals. That's actually the uniform of their service that they served in earlier in their lives. And also the medals and such things that they have in their uniform are ones that were actually earned instead of just given to them just to make them look good. So, you know, a pretty cool thing about the royal family. You got to have a good bit of respect for them because a decent amount of them were in the line of danger. Like, you know, not to go through a massive rabbit hole here, but Queen Elizabeth actually served in the Royal Auxiliary Corps and actually learned how to repair vehicles like trucks and things, which was about as much as Queen Elizabeth could do at the time. Of course, you know, it's the 40s. And let's see. Prince Philip actually served in the Royal Navy, and he actually was in combat. He actually served in the Royal Navy in East Asia and was in the middle of some major battles with, I believe, 1 or 2 kamikaze aircraft actually just skirting right over the deck of the battleship he was on and crashing into the seas nearby. So a lot of them actually have been in military service in one form or another if it was possible. Well, if it was possible to be in war, but all of them have served. But with that, moving on from that, which is just really interesting to hear that about them, because, you know, a lot of people always give them crap saying, oh, they live their high and mighty lives, and then at some point they actually served in the military most of the time. It's like, well, it wasn't always, you know, cushy for them, although, you know, they were getting preferential treatment out there a little bit, but it wasn't always perfectly cushy for them. But anyways, moving on from that clip and on into the next one, we also got to see some Russians getting hit hard by an M777 down in the area around Andriivka, from what we understand. And we can also see that the Russians are apparently sending out text. They said, Brokhi drone. Oh, look at that. They know what's coming. Oh, sorry. Actually, that's the drone right there. You can see it on camera. So they got a drone filming a drone that's filming Russians. And we can see a Russian grab his drone. And he's like, oh, I got it. Yeah. Now he's going back into his little dugout. And sadly, his dugout's gone. Yeah. Well, you know. Well, you know, he's not doing that well, to say the least. But, hey, pretty accurate shots. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip right there and on into our last one, where we got to see an Su-25 firing off some unguided rockets at the Russians. And so here's the clip. We see it fired off its rockets already, taking a hard right turn, firing off its flares. You see the second one coming over, firing off its rockets, and then taking the hard right turn as well, popping flares.
Первый ушел, второй ушел, норма.
Wonderful to see the Ukrainian Air Force in action over the skies of Ukraine, and hopefully hitting the Russians effectively with that missile volley, or rocket volley more so. But moving on from the area of Bakhmut and down into the area of Avdiivka, we also saw today that the Ukrainians have been conducting some drone attacks on the Donetsk airport, which has been a major stronghold for the Russians since 2014. Also, that audio is not what you think it is. But anyways, we're going to mute that, and here's the clip. This is from the 36th Brigade. And just to confirm, let me make sure the caption says this. Near Donetsk Airport. So this is Donetsk Airport. And we can see them finding some Russians on a road. This sounds like the setup for a terrible joke, and it largely is, because the Russians are a joke. But we can see them down there, just kind of hanging out near the street, near the Scooby-Doo van. Like, zoink, Scoob, I think we're laid out. Right, artillery bombardment. And we can see the artillery coming right in on their position, hitting dead onto that squad. Well, you know, there must be dead exhausted from that little hit right there. It must really rack on the nerves.
From this view, it looks like a nuclear bomb went off or something with that, like that view.
Dude, some Russian was out there in the tree line going, you know, watching this explosion. He was like, oh, bleh. But
I
yeah,
want to hear the beginning of that audio again.
Oh man, I'm telling you, that beginning audio.
Romania.
Oh man. I'm not even going to play that, because that didn't even sound right the first time. But anyways, moving on from that and on into a clip behind the lines near Novohrodivka, we got to see a Su-27 launch an AGM-88 anti-radiation missile, which are the ones used to target the radars of surface-to-air missile batteries. But here's the clip. You see the Su-27, you see it fire. And that's the end of the clip. But hey, hopefully it's hitting its target out there somewhere. You know, it's 5 o'clock out there somewhere, and if it's 5 o'clock out there somewhere, there's a Russian radar on out there at some point. So hopefully they will hit their target. Moving on from that, I won't be able to play as much of this clip as I want to, but I know y'all are in for a treat. Y'all really are. This is Matyar, and today we got to see another clip of him hitting the Russians. And so, here's the clip.
Той бій ще не закінчився, але мушу звітувати про збір. Тож просто підсвічу. Хробак сьогодні просто біснуватий пішов.
We see a Russian tank on the move. The drone comes down with the RPG.
Раніше загублені позиції.
And boom, jaga-jaga.
Танковою ротою. Ось так, в наглу. Хотіли зайти і щось собі відтяпати. Ну, та й мінімум 10.
Man, they're lining this thing up, man. It's like a shot at a pool table.
Сумісними зусиллями
Look at that.
цілого ряду пілотів
He's just
FPV,
hovering.
серед котрих Shadow,
They want to make sure they hit the Walmart tent dead on.
Шершнів, звісно, птахи Мадяра.
Man, they're like, and a
підрозділи
1,
58-ї
and a 2.
бригади. Ну,
That's how they're
і
flying the drone right now.
наші артилеристи, 55-та окрема артилерійська бригада. Трохи сьогодні
Man, what the hell are they doing? They're just getting like a good view of the tank?
робоків
Hit that
прилітає.
thing. Blow that piece of junk out of the sky. Oh, there they go. They finally got it.
Детальний звіт.
Oh, and now we can see a column of Russians moving across an open field.
Беха повна штурмовиків. Ще одна беха. Тулять. Пав! А тут і перша
I love it.
піздюліна
Love to hear it.
по хробакам прилетіла від артилеристів 55-ї.
And it's
окремої
Matthew's birthday?
бригади.
What?
Хробаки тікають.
It really is?
Загоряються,
Oh man, I'm
інші
telling you,
тулять.
no one gives me any respect
So,
around here.
you
I never had a
go,
birthday.
go.
Oh man, I'm telling
Побачий
you.
танк продовжує прорив, стріляє прямо з
But we
Look
see
at that
that-
thing scooting.
Man, that thing be scooting. That thing be booting.
за ним беха.
And we now see it being followed up.
Що тут позаду? Позаду все чітко. Горить третя беха. І повзе далі в сторону позицій. Танчик продовжує свій хід.
And you see this tank actually firing as it continues to advance across the field.
І отримує.
And when you see it get
перший
hit,
дзюнь.
hey, chugga chugga, Igor.
Не сильно то його
And
зупинило.
it fires again, though. It
Один
keeps
з
on
дружніх
going.
підрозділів пілотів FPV працював. Танк продовжує свій
And like
хід.
Mark Canfield said, he makes it look easy. Walk with your boys. Damn, son.
Damn, son, where'd you
this?
find this?
Ah, we did that at the same time, man. We thinking the same thing. But man, look at him go.
Бадабум!
Second hit.
Оце
Oh, that thing's cooking.
пендюль.
Oh man, call this thing Gordon Ramsay because that thing be burning. I mean, that thing be cooking. That's a wrong in the statement.
Це аргумент.
It's raw.
You're cooking in a burnt pan. You.
Змінив плани хробачого
Tank is screwed, to say the least.
танчику,
Ooh.
що не зупиняє
The crew, you know,
бехи
Little warm.
штурмовиками. О, з танку хробаки скачуть. Беха продовжує. Набирає хід. Цікаво, куди вони
but that
їдуть?
APC is going to keep on trucking.
І
It's
який
dedicated.
сенс після двох
It's dedicated to that
розбитих
grind.
одиниць продовжувати?
But sadly, this thing is going to grind to a halt in the middle of the field in a moment.
Епізод
It's about to get
швиденько.
slammed by a drone. I bet you money.
То цікаво. На борту 6 хробаків зверху. 6.
Looks like the infantry are dismounting, actually. And then the BMP whips a 180.
Дрифтом
Looks like it might have ran
розвертається.
someone over.
І
Actually, I'm sorry, it
назад.
didn't run anyone over.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
I didn't see nothing.
I didn't see nothing.
Man, this audio is so weird. I thought there was somebody standing behind me talking a second ago.
Yeah, I know, it's bizarre.
Це цікаво ще
But
попереду.
we're going to have to end the clip there because we have so much more to continue to cover tonight. But if y'all want to see the rest of Madhyar, go down in the link in the description below to the Day 583 map. Click on that link and you'll be able to go to this exact marker just north of Solodke here on the front line, also south of Donetsk. It's the airplane marker colored in olive, and you'll be able to watch that video in its entirety at your own pace if you want to. But moving on from that and into the area of Volodymyrivka, we also got to see some FPV drones in use by the 72nd Brigade, which is also in the area. All right. My God! That's it, but we can see the drone coming on in, hitting a vehicle, hitting another one, and a warehouse, flying all the way through it. Oh, what the hell? Dude, did you see that? Look at this. Let's see. Oh, here they are. And then they blow up in that room. That thing literally went on a guided tour, a self-guided tour of that house, or that warehouse more so. But man, they hidden everything down here in the 72nd Brigade. You know why they call it the 72nd
Oh,
Brigade?
good lord.
You know
Why
why
do they call it that?
Man, they call it that because they took out 72 vehicles in 5 hours. But moving on from that, we're going to be moving on out of that clip and down into the area of the general part of the southern front. These markers are not really in their exact locations. They were just put in the southern front because they are somewhere around here, but they're not exactly representative. So we're just going to throw through. Well, we're going to go through them real quick. First, we have a T-54 being used by the Russian army with an anti-drone cage on top of it. Would you look at that? I feel like we're in North Korea, and I'm about to hear that Choloma is on the wing, and we're about to be creating an industrial revolution while I starve to death, because this is ancient. That is insane. But moving on from that and on into the next clip, we also got to see some Russian paratroopers getting absolutely destroyed. And George Tincher said, "Shit be fire, yo," and I gotta agree. I gotta agree. Everything the Russians got's fire. And we hear the Chad music playing, and it looks like the Russians already got Chadified. Come on, man! It's pizza! I can't do a Gordon Ramsay. I just can't. I'm never
I mean, your stick's not even on the ground, man.
Your stick's not even on the ground, man!
Yeah, that did it justice. That was good.
Oh, man.
That was the best meme ever.
Oh,
Those
dude.
Irish people are hilarious when they get pissed off. Like, they go berserk.
Dude, the Scottish people are great, too. Really, everyone from Britain, when y'all get pissed off, like, if you're pissed off with me, it's not funny. But if you're pissed off just at a general thing, it's hilarious, I have to admit. But with that, that's the end of the clip. And by the way, I mean that in the most kind way, considering that we're 90% British, both Matthew and me. We mean that in the best of ways, because we are largely just British. But anyways, moving on from that, great to see the 106 got a Russian tank. And moving on from that, we also got to see a Russian man-pad conducting some near misses. When you see the drone flying over the village here, just taking a look around, you know, soaking in the sights. And we can see a little streak of a Russian man-pad there that just missed him. And where did it come from, pray tell? Right there in the middle of the street, because we can see the giant puff of smoke where the missile was fired. The drone doesn't care. The drone keeps going, because the drone don't give no damn. It starts flying over the fields, doing the same thing. Oh, there went another one. Well, let's say they missed again. Another several tens of thousands of dollars wasted by the Russians. And so they decide to fly over the village again just to piss them off, you know, just to get the point across. And literally they fired again and missed. That's the third miss on this drone. Well, you know, if you can't do it the third time, you got to do it the fourth time. So they're going to miss again. And we're just waiting. Where the hell was the missile? Oh, there it is. There it went. And it missed, of course. And that's the end of the clip. But beautiful to see. They can't even get a freaking guided missile to hit its own target. I mean, that's sad. You know they've hit rock bottom when even the guided missiles don't want to do their job. That's their whole thing.
Man, that was a damn good show, Governor.
Oh, bloody good show. Oh, bloody good show, Governor. Bloody good. And I gotta tell you, that was absolutely incredible, absolutely fantastic. We got to see the Russians firing their missiles with no regard for the costs whatsoever. But moving on from that and into the area of Verbove, we did get to see that the Ukrainians were driving towards Verbove today and actually passed that knocked out Challenger 2 from way earlier on in the battle. Alright, we're going to be muting that, but we can see...
Singing on the radio, nothing like it.
Oh, and there's the Challenger 2, actually. There it was. We see them continuing to race on forward. This is actually heading in the direction of Verbove. And of course, y'all all know that they have passed the Surovikin line. We've all seen that. We've all been able to confirm that for about 2 weeks at this point. But we can now see that they clearly control the area because they're advancing without any stress at all. There's not even any artillery fire in this area anymore. And we see some vehicle that just tanked into a crater there. Don't know when that happened. And you see them continuing on down the road. And passing a flipped over vehicle, but with that, that's the end of the clip and showing the road to Verbove. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the 47th Brigade in action in the southern front. And by the way, we get to see some pretty high-end stuff in action here. A Bradley and a Leopard 2. Hit it, baby! Man, they got that Battlefield 4 intro. Oh, you see the firefight going on? You see the Ukrainian infantry dismounting the Bradley over there to the right side.
Ah, get out of the way of the fire, Governor. Don't want to get hit with the bullet.
Oi, Governor. Are those flies? Or is that bullets? But anyways, we can see the, of course, battle carrying on quite heavily. We can see the Leopard 2 out there in the field trying to provide cover for the infantry to move on into the tree line and begin the battle. And we can see the M3 Brandley out there moving on out of the area.
I gotta say, Governor, I do fancy some armored personnel carriers when we're fighting. I do gotta say. Man, of course, he's thinking hard about a new one to come up with.
Yeah, I'm thinking, man. I'm straining over here. You know I am. What do you mean, a glass of water? I don't know. Maybe that's a good Scottish one. Let me know in the live chat if that was good, because I'll try and work a voice around that if it was, because I haven't done the Scottish accent in ages. But when you see the Leopard 2 fired its gun, and it's now moving out of the area. And that also is a Leopard 2A6. You can tell because it's got the long barrel.
Some British people are getting offended. They said, nobody here says governor.
And sorry, Sax 2. Sorry. We're just kidding. We're just playing around. You can call the Americans fat if you want. I won't take offense to it. It's somewhat true. But anyways, we can now see the Leopard firing again and now moving towards the infantry.
I think it's squeaking. Put some WD-40 on it.
Ooh, that was a little ricochet. Man, that thing sounds like a bird. Man, they need
sounds
to call
like my car.
Man, they need to call that thing Tweety. That's like a pit bull being called Princess or something, you know. You now see
is that a friendly tank or is it an enemy tank?
Well, it's a Leopard 2A6.
That thing's like acting a little sketchy there for a minute. I couldn't tell which way the barrel was pointing.
Oh man, well, you know, it's a Ukrainian one. It's a Ukrainian one. And Sexter said, I'm trying to save your embarrassment. Listen, man, we're an embarrassment already.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh, man, we're already an embarrassment. We're a joke to everyone. Oh, man, I'm telling you, people hate us.
But we can see the Leopard 2 firing and moving on around the fields again, just, you know, doing its thing. Mr. Pete said, they haven't said governor since, like, the 70s.
Cool.
Oh, man, I say governor all the time. But that's the end of the clip. Great to see the 47th Brigade, of course, being supported by the Bradley and the Leopard. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a BTR-4 in action in this area as well. And Duncan VR, Matthew, just asked you a good question. He said, can you do the Tweety Bird voice?
What's the Tweety Bird? Is that in Looney Tunes or something?
Yeah, I think so. It's that bird with a giant head. You know, it looks kind of like mine.
Damn, rush yourself. Jeez, man. I can't remember what that Tweety Bird sounded like, to be honest.
I don't really know what it sounded like either, but while we're talking about that, this BTR-4 is putting down some pretty decent rates of fire here, putting out some small bursts, like that one. We now see it moving a little bit towards the left side of the road. We see the stabilizer hard at work here.
Oh, come on, guys. It's just an orc. It's minging.
I just had this calypso. It is effing minging. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Great to see the BTR-4 at work in the area, and wonderful to see the Ukrainians, of course, trying to push forward and take ground. Also, by the way, a little bit of a follow-up on the story over Tokmak. An Su-35 was shot down yesterday. We were able to confirm that it was a Russian aircraft shot down. We didn't know the kind until today, and it was confirmed to be an Su-35 fighter aircraft. So, great to see. And of course, that marker just backs that statement up. It's from OSINT Technical. But moving on from that, out of the Tokmak area, it is now time for us to move up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 583 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is a speech. Speech!
Дорогі українці, українки, короткий звіт про цей день. Емоційний день. Почав його із заходів в Бабиному Яру, 82-гі роковини масових розстрілів євреїв нацистами в Бабиному Яру. Лише за кілька тих днів, вересня 41-го року, були вбиті більше 30 тисяч людей. Загалом в Бабиному Яру за час нацистської окупації були вбиті близько 100 тисяч людей. Євреї, також роми, українці, представники інших народів. Дуже важливо берегти пам'ять про ці жертви і про те зло, яке здійснило Голокост, було розбито та покарано. Україна береже таку пам'ять, ніколи знову для нас, для України, для усього цивілізованого світу. Це не пусті слова. І так завжди буде. Дуже Символічно, що саме сьогодні я зустрівся з нашими українськими вчителями, тими, від кого, власне, залежить збереження історичної пам'яті та багато в чому людяності. Цієї неділі Україна відзначатиме День вчителя, День працівників і працівниць освіти. Подякував сьогодні усім українським вчителям, вихователям, викладачам, наставникам, усім, хто виконує одну з найпочесніших місій в житті – навчає дітей тому, що необхідно, аби не змарнувати свою долю та бути міцним на життєвому шляху. Але навчання – це завжди більше, ніж здобуття знань і навичок та опанування професії. Це і характер, його сила, це чіткість розмежування між добром і злом, яка приходить, коли вивчаєш людську культуру. Освіта готує і налагоджує моральний компас людини, що він працював, і щоб завдяки цьому робота людини, життя людини збагачувала людяність. І це дуже важливо. І ми бачимо, зокрема, по тому, що робить Росія, що таке, коли система освіти збанкрутувала, коли моральний компас людей і усього суспільства зламаний. Зло тоді панує в такій країні. В Україні цього ніколи не буде. Не лише завдяки силі нашої зброї, але й завдяки силі нашого духу, силі українських характерів, нашої людяності, яка обов'язково переможе. Цей тиждень значно посилив нашу державу і наших людей. Ще й завтра будуть важливі для України новини, для наших воїнів, для всієї нашої держави. Працюємо над тим, щоб і наступні тижні додали Україні міцності, внутрішньої міцності та потрібної співпраці зі світом, щоб світ нас чув, розумів та підтримував. Я дякую усім, хто нам допомагає. Слава кожному і кожній, хто б'ється і працює заради України та людей. Слава Україні!
And
Heroям
Heroям
Slava.
Slava. And with that, that is the end of the halftime show, and of course the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 583 of the war. With that, we're about to be moving on into the second part of the stream. One of my favorite parts. Actually, it is my favorite part of the stream, because we get to talk to all of y'all for about the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. And it is a Friday night, so we can push it a little bit if we have to. But still, I gotta thank every single one of y'all for being here with us while we cover the news tonight. Of course, we're moving into the second segment. The fun is not over. The fun has only just begun. But thank you all so much for being here with us tonight and watching all of this interesting news from really all around Europe unfolding live in front of us over the past day. But with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. Oh, man. Moving into our final question and poll segment. Our very first poll says, do you think Russia is negotiating with the Taliban to access the left-behind U.S. military stockpile? Let's see what the audience thinks about this question. 54% said yes, they want U.S. weapons. 27% said, maybe, but that can't be the main reason. 10% said no, the left-behind weapons are bad, and 9% said unsure. So I would certainly be in the 54%. I think the Taliban, I think Russia is trying to gain access to the Taliban's stockpile of American weapons that they got left behind from the evacuation from Afghanistan. So even if some of the equipment isn't necessarily in the best working shape, I still believe they can try to repair it. Russia does have a means to get these parts, even though it's probably pretty tough for them to do so. They can still get them, and that is a bad thing. I would personally put more weight on the Taliban situation than the North Korean situation when it comes to a potential partnership between them and Russia. But Enforcer, what say you?
Really quickly, let's find out, what did we leave behind? What did we leave behind in Afghanistan? Afghanistan.
Blackhawks.
Dun, 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 dun. So let's see here. We have equipment. Oh, wow. Hey, equipment worth $7.12 billion remain in Afghanistan after withdrawal. I actually thought it was a lot lower than that. I never really looked into the exact number, actually, but I always thought it was around like 500 million to possibly $1 billion at most, and $1 billion was really pushing it. I didn't know we left $7.1 billion of raw equipment behind. So let's see. Maybe we can get an answer here. So this is Radio Free Europe. Let's see, it left around 7 billion worth of military equipment. Sees the arms falling the fall, but we need to know what kind of equipment it was to figure out what they could do. So,
There the fellows are.
Hey, look at them. They look like a bunch of upstanding guys. People wearing ski masks are always trustworthy people. But it sadly doesn't really give us any idea of what kind of weapons we could expect them to have. But at $7.1 billion, I've got to be honest with you all, that's kind of shocking that we left behind that much. Let me... Cost of Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier. A Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier costs about $12.8 billion. How much does a Nimitz class aircraft carrier cost? Let me pull that up because I have a feeling it's cheaper. And about $4.5 billion each for a Nimitz class aircraft carrier. So that means that the amount of equipment that we left in Afghanistan is about the equivalent of 1.5 Nimitz class supercarriers worth of equipment that we just left there. So that's actually shocking. I actually did not know it was that much. And considering that, out of $7.1 billion of equipment, even if most of it wasn't usable, there's at least $1 billion of usable equipment that's still sitting inside of Afghanistan right now that the Russians could look at, of course, possibly try and reverse engineer or even use. Of course, you know, the Russians could try and get it and then try and sell some of the proprietary information to the Chinese at a little bit of a premium. So I don't really know. I mean, like, that's actually quite concerning that we leave behind $7 billion because I feel like it would be cheaper to just transport that back than to keep $7 billion of the stuff there.
And I got numbers for you. Now. I found the numbers. It looks like we left behind 23,000 Humvees. We left behind 900 combat vehicles of the, I believe, MRAP variety or something like that. We also left behind about 80 or so U.S. aircraft. With all that happened to them was the control panel got a little smashing from a hammer. 42,000 pieces of night vision, surveillance, biometric, and positioning equipment, all proprietary to the U.S. military. And also $48 million worth of ammo. All kinds of nice weapons, AR-15s and M4s and things like that, and pretty much everything that we love.
So, the aircraft are probably unusable. I'm gonna have to say that. Like even with the cockpit just kind of getting bashed up a little bit, there's probably no way they can keep the aircraft flying for long because they're very maintenance intensive, and no one in Afghanistan has the ground training to maintain those aircraft. So those we can write off. Everything else, however, that might not be a write-off, especially small arms and weapons that can just kind of be carried around by a single person. All of those are still usable, so that is a little concerning to hear. So I'd have to say probably the Russians are dealing with the Taliban for the weapons at this point. I'm actually going to have to change my opinion based on what we're hearing and go with the 54% of y'all that say that it's probably for the weapons. Now, as far as...
Surely it's not for the fighters. They're not exactly what you'd call world class or anything like that when it comes to the fighting side of things.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I don't really think anyone could call the Taliban or the Mujahideen world class, but one thing that they certainly have is a decent amount of weapons in there, and I've got to be honest, that was a little bit of an oversight and a blunder on the U.S.'s part to leave a lot of that stuff behind. But that's a thing for another time. That's not for this stream. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says the Pentagon can't confirm the Black Sea Fleet commander is actually alive. And did Russia put a dead man on the conference call? 62% said yes, he was dead on the call. 20% said unsure. 13% said, I can't believe it, but maybe. And 6% said no, he was probably alive. And I cannot believe it. This is something that the Russians, I believe, actually pulled off. I think they really put the dead guy on the call. I think that was a still image of him laying in a hospital bed. And they basically photoshopped him in to a video conference call because he never spoke, never moved, or anything. And now the Pentagon, after reviewing that footage, has said they cannot confirm that he's alive even after looking at that. So to me, that is basically saying that the guy was dead, and we were sitting there staring at the image of somebody who was deceased at one of the largest meetings in the Russian government. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with you, Matthew, on every single aspect. It's insane to think that they actually tried to pull that off, and apparently it was a little bit believable, even for us. We were like, well, he might possibly be alive, but now with the U.S. saying they can't really confirm he's alive, that pretty much clears out the air. He's probably dead. So with that, I hope that does address that well, in my opinion. And also, Matthew, saw some people talking about some stuff about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and actually having read a lot about it. The first video that this channel ever made, which is not even public anymore, was about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and everything that led up to it as far as Afghanistan's history, all the way back to, I believe, the medieval ages. I covered everything from the Middle Ages up till now. One thing that's interesting to note, and I think this may actually be the reason why so many billions of dollars of equipment was left behind, is because all of that was probably supposed to be for the Afghan government once we left. And then they collapsed so quickly, it just was all sitting around. Because when you think about it, the 40 aircraft sounds a lot like a small Air Force for a brand new Afghanistan, and 26,000 Humvees sounds a lot like a basic motor pool. Like, you know, all of that stuff, it sounds a lot like we were giving that over to the Afghan government as we were leaving, and then they collapsed so quickly that we ended up just losing $7.1 billion of equipment and had no fallback plan for if the Afghan government would have collapsed. So that may be why it was there.
I think it's more along the lines of the situation got really out of hand very quickly. The U.S. government was caught off guard by it, and we had to scramble out of there quickly before our guys got in a really bad situation, even worse than it turned out to be in the end. And that equipment that was left behind was probably meant to be taken out, or at least destroyed to a greater extent than it was. But we were rushing to smash panels and cockpits and stuff like that, which really wasn't effective to destroy the equipment well enough to not be usable or repairable. You know, it just looks like a panic and a bad mistake.
Yeah, and I don't really think, and this is something that was crazy, I don't actually think anyone expected the Afghan government to collapse as fast as it did. It collapsed almost as soon as we started to leave. There was really no support for their government. And the problem, I'm going to say this really quickly, the problem with going into Afghanistan is that the Afghan people and all of the different cultures that make up Afghanistan, because it's not a homogenous group like you would think with, say, Germans or French people, where it's largely just French and Germans, and there's different flavors, but they're not like completely different. In Afghanistan, that's the case. People in Afghanistan from village to village can have entirely different cultures from each other. They're very tribalistic in Afghanistan even to this day, because it's a very isolated region, so their culture wasn't able to really bounce around others and gather ideas. They just didn't really have that chance, like, say, the Persians, now the modern day Iranians, had, or the Indians had. So they were kind of in a tough spot, and going into a country like that's largely tribalistic, and did incredibly well, mind you, under a monarchy. I'm not saying that I'm a monarchist or anything, but that seemed to have been one of the most successful forms of government Afghanistan ever had. Trying to install a democratically elected government in a country like that honestly was a bit of a poor idea. I think we should have gone about that as in trying to install some kind of a monarchy that would have some legitimacy over the Afghan people, because I feel like the Afghans would have respected a monarchy more so than they would have respected a democratically elected democracy. But of course, that is a foreign policy thing that spanned over the course of 20 entire years from 2001 to 2021, and that is something that is such a big topic to cover. We would never be able to cover that even if we spent the whole stream doing that. But still, with that, I hope that does address a little bit more about that fairly well. But if y'all look through Afghan history, you will see the monarchy of Afghanistan was the longest lasting government of its kind in the region, and was apparently the most successful until some things happened, and then the monarchy ceased to exist largely because of foreign interference. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Do you remember, like, I just was thinking back about the Afghanistan evacuation. Do you remember when the planes were trying to leave from the runway and stuff, and they were, like, packed full of Afghanis, and they were trying to, like, climb onto the plane and everything, getting the landing gear wells and stuff, and they were being, like, literally falling out of the plane, like, when it was taking off?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was terrible. Like, that shows how badly panicked the military was to get out of there so quick. And really, they didn't really have a choice, in my opinion, because the way that situation was collapsing so fast, and we saw 7 soldiers get killed, like, right before we pulled all of the people out, that could have turned nasty real quick, because we were on the defensive trying to leave and basically had our backs turned to the enemy trying to get out of there, and really weren't in a position to defend or properly secure any area. That's why we saw 7 people get killed on the way out.
Well, hell, there were so few people there at that point. I think we only had a garrison of 2,500 people in the entire country at that point, and then ramped it back up to around 7,000, which is about 2 brigades worth. Well, actually, yeah, I think that would be 2 brigades worth of strength. We had about 2 brigades in Afghanistan at that point, which just wasn't enough. It would have never been enough to do anything with, outside of just trying to make sure that the airfield was held down and we got as many people out as we could. But beyond that, we got to move on, man, because we're starting to run out of time and we got loads of questions to cover.
All right, and moving back into our Super Chat segment, we have a $50 donation from Michelle Esquera. And thank you very much, Michelle, for that very generous support. And she is putting this toward the suit fund on your victory day in court. And my question is, do you still communicate with Operator Starsky? And maybe we can get him on stream like the olden days.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Michelle. And also, thank you for getting us a suit fund for our victory day in court. We love court. We love court. And we've been trying to help other folks to get to the court. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Matthew?
Man, go to court.
Man,
go to court.
Go to court. You got nothing to be afraid of. You got nothing.
Don't be assaulting nobody. Just go to court.
Man, don't be battering anyone like some kind of a piece of fish at a fish and chip shop. Just get your papers and go to court. If you mean what you say, that you got nothing to hide from, why you scared of getting served? It makes no sense. But anyways, do we still communicate with Operator Starsky? A little bit, not as much as we used to, because we have really just gotten into our zone and just started, doing law school and this, but we might have him back on the show. We largely don't have guests at all anymore, although Operator Starsky was a great guest every single time he came on. We'll consider it, and we'll see about possibly having him on in the future. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And of course, maybe one day the stream will be like back in the olden days. But we actually touched on this a little bit, I think, the other night, about why we don't really have guests on much anymore. And this does not apply to Operator Starsky, by the way. Just want to let you know that up front. But it applies to most other guests, not calling them out specifically person after person, or excluding and including people. Just going to kind of say it as a general statement from how we felt after we had guests on. We usually felt like we were kind of getting used by guests. Like, a lot of people really wanted nothing to do with us, and they just kind of wanted to get in front of our community and get exposure. And that's how it felt off camera. Like, when we were preparing to bring them on, we'd be like, hey, what's up? They'd be like, hey. And that's it. And it wasn't really... It didn't really feel like they were here to deal with us. It just felt like they were more so here to try and get subscribers from the audience. And I was like... kind of not one to do that. I'm kind of one to try and make friends with folks. That was kind of my aim of having people on the show, and then that didn't really seem to be the case at all. And then some people kind of did us dirty after they were on our show behind the scenes that we haven't really talked about much, and that kind of like soured our idea of having guests on the show, because every single guest we ever had, except for Starsky, was always trying to just like one-up us on our own show, or just try and get in front of our audience, which felt really rude, especially considering that they had been invited on our show, and I liked their channels, and that's why I brought them on. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Michelle. And I hope that does address why we don't really have a lot of guests on nowadays. I hope everyone understands. It's not anything against anyone, and of course we're not trying to go around and stir up some fine Mongolian beef. But that's largely how we felt, and kind of not really a big fan of how it went for the most part. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Michelle. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and Kaltenberg said, enforcers, just do y'all thing. And I think that's what we decided to do at this point. It seems to be the best solution to go with, so good advice. But moving on to our next Super Chat, we have a $33 donation from, guess who? Duncan VR, the animal noises expert. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. He says, Bamuba, bada boom, baba. Matt's professor says, bah, quite moo, woof. I guarantee they're not saying that. if I were on Twitter, baba, you would get sheep bobcat memes, baba. Matt can do enforcers at home or two. Oh, no, I can't. No. Oh, man. Quack, quack, bah. There's a liking for the nitric acid coke fund. Moo.
Nitric acid coke. What a throwback, man. That's like from day 110 or something like that. That is a long time ago, but still, thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. And of course, throwing in the traditional animal noises. My response to that would be, sleep, Lightman! But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make it possible. And of course, folks like you who throw in the traditional animal noises are always greatly appreciated. You're keeping a tradition alive in the Lee Spring Army, and we greatly appreciate you for that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is a $24 donation from Boss Sabasa, who does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Boss, for that support and for being a longtime channel viewer as well. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I've got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you have helped to make this thing possible, Boss Sabasa. And I got to thank you so much for being here with us tonight and supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. I got to be honest, your name is one we have not heard much. I don't think we've heard that one at all, but YouTube isn't saying it's the first time you super chatted. So I'm like...
I've been around for a long time, Boss Sabasa.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, for some reason, maybe it's because I've never heard their name, like, said aloud or something, because, like, I'm like, that name sounds so new to me, but still... Thank you so much for the support, Bossa Bossa, in helping this channel to keep on running, because, of course, you're helping the Lee Spring Army's flag to continue to fly over the area of Europe, wherever you may be there. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to SYI Tiger 907, who puts in a $20 donation and says, internet is slow here in Tuksuk Bay, Alaska. Gonna be working kind of late today. And man, do y'all even have like you know, the days, like the light goes down, all that good stuff, like it turns to nighttime and stuff? Do y'all even have that in Alaska?
Man, the light goes down, like they're just turning down a giant light in the sky.
No, I don't even know why I said it. Does the sun go down, not the light?
Mine, does that damn light turn off? I want that light to turn off.
Yells out the window, hey, turn that light off, dang it. Come on, Cletus.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, them damn goblins in the sky that turn the giant light on and off ain't working up here. Oh, so, thank you for the support, SYI. And also, man, I'll tell you what, I gotta respect you, man. I hate that you're out there again. I know you don't like it out there in the boonies, but hey, someone's got to keep the lights on out there, and you're that guy. You're that guy, pal. And thank you so much once again for being here with us tonight again. Of course, the internet is a little splotchy out there. You are in literally the middle of nowhere. But still, thank you, regardless of how hard it was. You are on the stream tonight, and we appreciate you so much being here, and I hope you've been enjoying tonight's stream as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and I hope you're having a pretty okay time up there in Tuksuk Bay. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And the next one goes to Steve T, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Steve, for that support. He says, do you think Ukraine could save Western precision weapons with locally made composite plane like drones that can drop or FPV much larger, cheaper bombs on static trenches, rail, and bridges?
I would say that Ukraine could probably save Western weapons if they manufactured their own, like the drones and such. And they have been trying, especially with deep strikes in Russia. It seems like that's their go-to method. But in some instances, you just need Western weapons. Like, for example, the Storm Shadow was able to do something that the Ukrainians will probably never be able to do during this war, which is possess any kind of stealth technology. That's something that really nothing the Ukrainians will ever be able to manufacture will be able to do. So for the most part, you can try and save Western weapons by doing something like that. But beyond that, it's, you know, it's something that I think you kind of have to decide on a case-to-case basis. Deep strikes into Russia, use Ukrainian weapons. Strikes into Crimea, probably use Storm Shadows, ATACMS, and other kinds of weapons like that. They're a lot quicker, have a massive explosive yield, and also the Storm Shadow is stealth, so it's almost impossible to shoot down. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Steve. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Jao Silva, who says, let's go. Stop greetings from PT across the Atlantic. Stop love your content. Never stop. Chase them to the borders. Stop. If they do, they seize them, or we chase them out. So they spread word. Oh. Question. Have fun. Heart.
And thank you so much for the support, Jao Silva. And you are a channel legend. I haven't heard your name in a hot minute. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. Amazing to have you here with us tonight. And also, we will keep this thing going until the war ends. I'm very adamant about that.
Stop.
Stop. Pause. Start. We have been covering this thing since day one. Stop. We have always been continuing to cover this war 6 days a week since the first month of the war. Stop. I'm going to stop doing that. It's just going to start becoming like a part of my speech pattern. But still, we have been doing this for an incredibly long time, ever since day one. It's the 583rd day now, and we're only 17 days away from the 600th day of the war. It's been going on forever, and we're going to keep covering this thing until it's done with. Nobody was around when I started this channel and started covering the war. There was only 80, no, actually, I think I had 103 subscribers when I first started covering this war. We're now up to about 160,000. I think we're only, let me check. Yeah, we're only about 60 away from that right now. So we're 60 subscribers away. Once we reach that, we'll be at 160,000. So it's been a long time coming. It's been a long time rolling that we've been doing this thing, and we are going to keep covering it until the war ends. That's just a promise that I made to everyone at the beginning of the war before the channel even blew up. I think it was like the third or second day that I made that statement that we were going to keep covering it until it was over. And while it didn't end in the few months we thought it would, we're still here. We're still covering the war 6 days a week. And I largely plan on doing that until the end. Until the last shot's fired, until a peace treaty is signed, we are going to cover this war like clockwork every single day. And so thank you so much, Jal Silva, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help it to be possible for me to work like a machine and to keep this channel running 6 days a week, every day.
And me too. I'm here too. I'm not like a chopped liver. You know what I mean?
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And Matthew has also been here for quite a while too. But Matthew has gotten sick. Real sick sometimes. And Matthew, that's a big no-no on this channel. You can't get sick around here. I'm just kidding. But Matthew has been dead on dedicated a massive amount to the channel as well, and you're helping both of us to be able to keep this thing running 6 days a week until the very end of the war. But the large reason why, Matthew, I said I was doing it is because I was talking about like the very first days of the channel when no one was around and it was just me. And so,
man, you only ran this thing for like 3 weeks before I got on here.
No, I ran it for a month. I ran this thing for a month.
4 weeks.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that was a long time. I mean, hell, that was 30,000 subscribers in between when I started covering the war to when you got on. It was a 30,000 subscriber gain. So I mean, that was one of the fastest times in the channel that the subscriber numbers grew. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, Jal Silva, and helping the channel to keep on running, because folks like you help me and Matthew to be able to make this possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next super chat goes to Bernard Rubin, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Bernard, for that support. And he says, just when you think when Europe couldn't be more chaotic, another thing happens in the damn Baltics.
And I gotta tell you, something's always happening in the damn Baltics. I gotta tell you something. Someone's gonna have to start bolting up there and stopping this crap because it's annoying. But still, thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And of course, when everything's all good and said and done, and Matthew, was that supposed to be the Balkans or the Baltics?
He said Balkans.
Oh, I thought you just said Baltics.
Oh.
Oh.
I said that on the video today earlier. I was wrong, and many people were very quick to point that out, and I had to post a correction in the comments.
Oh, man. Oh, man. But still, of course, things are always popping off in the Balkans. It's actually been pretty peaceful for about the past 10, 15 years, but it's starting to really kick off again. Hopefully, we can stop that before it really goes out of control. But still, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also,
all right.
Dude, Rob Ice been throwing shade. Oh, man, dude. Do you see that?
He said, who was that Jello roll that took over from my spot? Like before I was here, who was that guy? He was lame, seriously bad. I listen, I'm not going to, bash the guy for necessarily his style or whatever. He had his style going, and he was here before me. But I will bash him for what he did when he left, because he turned around and tried to screw Andrew over on the way out. And also all the other mods were working with him or some other people to try to screw us over. And that's when I hopped in, because I was like, hey, I won't mind helping out with that thing. So Enforcer brought me on. Then I started doing it. I think that caused some jealousy amongst the people, and that might have led to the downfall a little bit. But I was already preparing in the background for a disaster to occur, so we had a thing already set up to get them on out of here if they caused a problem. That's what we did when the mod revolution of 2022 took
Great
place.
Schism. But
yes,
it was that guy. he wasn't that bad. He wasn't that bad of a moderator. Well, not a moderator, but a co-host. He wasn't that bad. But the thing is that it was really annoying to me when all the moderators, because, and here's the thing, is that at the beginning of the war, I was incredibly nice and open to listening to suggestions from everyone, believe it or not. Not really like that anymore, and there's a good reason why, and it's because of those people. I actually let moderators on the Discord server, when we had one, have inputs on the show. And so it went from, like a 30-minute debrief after each stream where they said what they liked and didn't like, to then it went on to being 2 hours long of debriefs. I was sitting in a Discord call as long as I was on stream during that time, and they would just sit there and come up with everything they wanted to change, and they acted like it was not my show anymore. It was their show, and I was nothing more than a puppet for them. And then finally, they wanted to start giving me ultimatums behind the scenes that if I didn't do or say what they wanted, they were going to go and destroy the channel for me and just go start spreading lies about me to everyone. So at that point, Matthew had become the co-host. I think he was the co-host for like 5 days at that point. And then, that's when the Great Schism happened. All of them got booted immediately. And funnily enough, they're still out there to this day, still hovering around out there. I think we've seen like 1 or 2 of them over the course of this whole war, still out there doing their crap. And it's just...
No, they're working with that. They're working with the Troublemakers community now.
Yeah, actually,
that's how salty they were about it.
And you know what's crazy? Like, this is the whole thing that's going on. They went and stole, for the most part, well, when I say stole, they plagiarized my intro card that y'all see every night, copied it greatly, and also copied the thumbnails a decent bit too. And so one day, I sat there, and it's one specific guy out of the mods in the Great Schism that did that. And so one day on stream, I said, y'all know who you are, stealing the intro card, don't do that. And so then that's how we've gotten into the beef with the other guy, because he apparently had also plagiarized the intro card, and so his community, his viewers who were watching our stream, went back to him and said, hey, he's talking about you, and then we never were. And so that's why that whole thing has happened to this day. We went and clarified that with that guy, and that's a whole thing. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. But still, that's kind of a bit of the story, but Rob was throwing shade with that. We're on to the next one.
Hey, real quick, funnily enough, the original mods, which have teamed up with the Troublemaker guy, they're over there actually infighting with one another. I saw people getting in absolute cussing battles with each other over there through a couple of people that do some looking for me to make sure nothing crazy is being said over there, like physical threats. Oh my God, man, they've had meltdown after meltdown over there with those people. All these Troublemaker type people, they always implode on themselves every single time. And it's always not really funny to watch. It's just kind of sickening to watch, more like it. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat. We have a $20 donation from Butchie777. And thank you very much for that support. And said, a small donation just because you make me laugh so much in the mornings and how much I appreciate all you both do. And it's way too early for me to think of a question, so please take one from the live chat. And it's 4:38 a.m. here. Zoink Scoop!
Like, Zoink Scoop? That's kind of Raggy, sleep deprivation. But still, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for being here tonight. Every bit of support I appreciate greatly. And I never want anyone to think that any amount of support is too small to be unappreciated. I know, because, of course, working real jobs, it takes a good bit to earn $1. And that's why I always go through and thank each and every one of y'all individually for your support, call y'all out by name, and you give each of y'all an equal amount of time, no matter how big the support was, because each of y'all are putting y'all's hard-earned dollars towards this channel, so that way we can do this as a job. And I got to thank you so much for that, because that support is greatly appreciated and helps us to keep this thing running. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying the channel enough to find it worthwhile to support. Folks like you, regardless of how much the support is, whether it be $500 or even just $1 or less than that, y'all help this channel to keep on running all the same. It's a group effort by the entire Leaf Spring Army to help us to keep this thing rolling, and I thank you so much for being a part of it. And so with that, let's get a live chat.
All right, and the live chat question is going to go to Old Warrior, who says, have you heard anything about Kazakhstan sanctioning Russia?
Yes, we actually covered that the other night. So many people come in here and ask us questions, and that's another one, because I saw someone tonight saying something else about something we covered yesterday. We actually have covered all of this stuff usually a day before most of y'all are starting to hear about it and ask about it. And so, like with this, make sure to go onto our map and look around on our markers, because we actually have one in Kazakhstan at their capital Astana that specifically talks about them enforcing the sanctions. So yes, we have, and we covered that in great detail yesterday. And so with that, I hope that does address that further well. Thank you so much once again for sponsoring the live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have another super chat from SY Tiger 907 who puts in another 20, and they said, I posted a picture of an Alaskan sunrise, Taksuk Bay, on your X, formerly Twitter. Isn't that funny how we have to say X, formerly Twitter? Because you can't just say X on its own, it sounds weird. So you have to make the name X, formerly Twitter. But I need to go and take a look and see if I can spot that later. But Enforcer, do you want to go ahead and pull it up now or check it out after stream?
Let's pull it up now. Let's take a look at this thing.
Let's take a look. Let's see here.
Where will we find it, Matthew? Where? Hey, we reached 12K. Would you look
Yes,
at
we
that?
did.
Would you look at that? That's
Plus
nice.
one foreign minister.
Hey, plus one foreign minister. And maybe we'll be able to get more foreign ministers in here. That would be really cool. But let's see where it is. Hopefully, while I filibuster, Matthew can find that really quickly. And I said filibuster. It's actually filibuster. Filibuster, boy. But anyways, you guys, Mark Canfield said, you guys are truly awesome. And thank you, Mark. Y'all are actually the awesome ones because y'all are here with us every night. And that's just unbelievable to me. Shauna says, resist. Just say Twitter in spite. Yeah, I mean, we might get to that because X isn't catching on. You know, it's just not. Like, I mentally can't wrap my head around X. I can Twitter, though. Let's see here.
And I'll say as well, I don't see it right off the bat. I'm not sure if maybe I don't know where to look. One thing I will say is X, or whatever you want to call it, the notifications are all messed up on there. They've never gotten that really sorted out. So when someone tags us, sometimes it doesn't pop up if you're not from a verified account because they want you to pay for whatever reason now. So I'm not sure if it hasn't popped up because of that reason, but I'm not seeing it in the little sheet here. But if you'd like to DM us that picture, we can take a look at it there.
And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, SY. Sadly, we won't be able to see the picture now, but we will be looking for it, and I will make sure to make a comment on it once we get to see it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, SYI. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we will make sure to circle back to that at some point in the future. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have also the return of another channel legend, Colleen Emsley, who puts in a 50 Canadian donation. And it's good to see you once again, Colleen, and I still have that helicopter back here on the model case. I still love it, and thank you very much once again for the helicopter. And she says, hello to you both and LSA, and still watching, but later after live stream, over so missing live chat, life has been too hectic lately. And amen to that, and keep up the good work.
And thank you so much for the support, Colleen, the helicopter pilot of the Lee Spring Army. And we've been wondering where you've been. And Happy Dragon just said it. Wow, long time no see. I know. We were wondering, like, what happened to Colleen? Because Colleen actually sent Matthew this really beautiful, I think it's a Bell 216, if I'm correct. Let me pull that up. I got to make sure I'm saying that right, because if I'm saying something about the model that they sent. And it is a Bell 206, yes. I think. Let me check. Nope, that's not. It is a 216. It's the 212. Hang on. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, it's the Bell 212. It's the civilian version of the Huey. But she sent us a model of that in the livery of the exact same helicopter that she flew, and that was so cool. Matthew still has it in his office. It's a massive model, so it's very easy to see when you go in there. And we still talk about you every once in a while whenever we look at that model. We're like, wasn't that nice that she sent that model? But still, great to have you in tonight. Hopefully life does get a little bit slower. It's tough living in the fast lane nonstop, and one day we'll be able to slow down and take it easy, but not as long as I'm my boss. Oh man, I'm telling you. But still, thank you so much once again for being here with us tonight, Colleen. Even if it's for just a short time, it's wonderful to have you in here. You've been a legend ever since the early days of the channel, and I thank you so much for supporting us and helping us to keep this thing rolling right now. And thank you for thanking us for the work we do. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one here, we have a $20 super chat from Gillyflower, and thank you very much, Gillyflower, for that support. And they said, Slav Ukraine, and thank you so much for your continued and diligent reporting, and answer a question from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you make the channel passable. And thank you so much for enjoying the hard work that we put into this channel. We try our best to make sure that the work is very good and very appreciable. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, and the live chat question is going to go to, let's see here, Wondering, who says, I was wondering if Lukashenko died and Belarus leaned away from Russia, do you think Putin just keel over from a heart attack?
No, no, I don't think Belarus is a pretty insignificant country. Funnily enough, it's just completely insignificant. So I don't really think it'd freak Putin out too much. He'd probably try military intervention, but it wouldn't be anything that would just throw Putin over the edge, in my honest opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Rick. He puts in a $20 donation. We also have a $10 super chat from Mad Ricks. We have two Ricks. What do you know? And thank you both very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you to both of the Ricks, both Mr. Rick, who threw in a $20 US, and also Ricks, Mad Ricks, who threw in a €10. Y'all from two other parts of the world, but both of you united together to help the channel to keep on running. And I gotta tell you, I thank the Ricks so much. The Ricks are helping the channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you to both of you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to SY Tiger 907 yet again, who puts in another 20. And thank you very much for the continued support tonight. They said, is there another way to send like Instagram and Facebook? And sadly not, because we actually don't have an Instagram nor a Facebook page, just because generally I don't care for either one of those platforms. And the main place that I go to source news the quickest is sadly Twitter. It's really not my preference, but it is nonetheless the fastest. But if there is ever one day a viable alternative, I would check it out. I don't find Threads to be a viable alternative, sadly. It's not really that good. It's just really a copy of Twitter that Zuckerberg put out. So not really a real alternative yet. But sadly, we don't have either one of those either. But Enforcer, what say you?
And sadly, we don't have one of those. So sadly, we wouldn't be able to take it that way. But hey, if you have a Twitter, put it on your Twitter account, just like post it as a post, and then at us on the post, like at It's the Enforcer, or Enforcer Official, or whatever our handle is on Twitter. And I think that ought to help us to be able to see it, possibly. Right, Matthew?
I believe so, yeah.
And so give that a shot, SYI, and maybe that will work, and maybe we'll be able to see it then. And also, you don't have to send in the super chat to let us know if you do that. You can just send something in the live chat, and Matthew will hopefully see it and let me know, and then we'll go on the hunt for it again. But still, thank you so much once again for support, SYI. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Rob Eisman, and thank you very much, Rob, for that support. He says, Alexander the Great tried a 3-year mission in Afghanistan. He became a drunk, paranoid man and died 5 years later, and as the Afghans say, you might have the clocks, but we have the time. Excerpt from the movie Hyena Road.
I gotta thank you for the support, Rob Eisman, and thank you once again for being here with us tonight. Of course, Master Submariner. He's the guy who knows everything about submarines, and if y'all ever wanted to ask a submarine question, Rob is the guy who would know. And also, Afghanistan is a graveyard of most major countries in the world. That's the funny thing about them. They've beat the Alexander the Great, of course. They beat the British. They beat the Soviets. And kind of in the end, in the long run, they ended up even beating the Americans' willpower in the area, too. They're kind of an undefeatable country, one of the few in the world, largely because of their geography and also how things are in the area. But still, a very interesting concept, a very interesting one. You might have the clocks, but we got the time. Man, that sounds like some Monopoly stuff right there, man. You might have the hotels, but I got Boardwalk, baby. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, real quick, folks, I want to say one thing, because even though we do talk about the Troublemakers channel and stuff like that, I want to make this very clear. This individual has started making physical threats. They just made another one just now. I just saw it posted on his Discord channel. Considering the severity of these threats that he's making, which are threatening to actually physically come harm people, be leery dealing with this guy, because clearly he's mentally unstable. I didn't honestly expect him to start bringing it to this level with physical threats. So, be careful when you deal with this guy, because he's obviously a nut. And I'm going to leave it at that. But Enforcer, do you have anything to add?
What kind of physical threat is he sent out now?
He's talking about physically hurting our community if they approach him, and he's going to send them to God, to the capital.
That's a death threat right there. That's a pretty interesting thing to say. that might actually get you in trouble with law enforcement making comments like that. 'Cause that's actually an imminent threat of violence right there. Like hell, y'all could just be in the vicinity of this guy and just say, "Hey, I watched The Enforcer," and he could just end your life. Apparently, that's new. That's a next level thing right there. I saw GW North. He said, "FBI, FBI, open up." But hell, that's a pretty interesting one right there. I don't even really know how to
And
comment.
I think he
That's
just
new.
realized the severity of it because he just deleted it right as we just mentioned it just then. So obviously, I think the severity of that statement just set in.
Well, it's a little too late for that now. The statement was made, that's kind of like how all the other statements he's made has gone. Just says them out of the blue, completely untrue or absolutely insane, and then acts like he has no accountability for it. That's nothing new. That's just something that's, I guess, a part of that playbook. Shocking, nonetheless, though. And kind of giving y'all an idea of what we've had to deal with, considering that that's now being directed right at y'all. Hell, we've had an endless strew of emails and comments from this guy that just are sickening, to say the least. But anyways, with that, why even bother talking about this guy? He's probably now crapping his pants because of the own comment he made. He'll be a victim of his own work. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, it is screenshotted, by the way. I have someone that is very kind to collect evidence for me because I don't have time to go over there and monitor all this stuff. But this is why I have people checking this stuff out, because we need to know if threats are made like that. Because obviously, we don't know what this fellow's intention is. He's obviously causing trouble, but causing trouble versus threatening someone is totally different things. And we have never condoned violence, but this individual right here seems to think that is the solution to his problems, which it is never the solution to the problem. And also that will get you in some severe trouble.
And you'll know something. I'll actually share this with y'all because this is apparently what started him on his new crusade. We were actually going to get him process served while he was in Ukraine. And that's kind of why we asked most of y'all if any of y'all happen to be in the area of Kyiv, because that's where he is right now. We're going to see if we could possibly get someone to help us to process serve the guy, so that way the lawsuit can move forward. Because unless if he is physically served with a lawsuit, our lawsuit can't go forward against the guy. So that's what we were trying to ask around for. So apparently one of his members of his community approached me and acted like he was one of our members, and he found out for that guy that we actually did know where he was, and we were attempting to process serve him. And so now that's apparently sent him on the next freak out level. And all I gotta say is this, okay? This is all I gotta say. People might not like litigation, but if what the guy did wasn't wrong, why is he scared of going to court? Because the court would say what he did wasn't wrong and they just throw the case out. So what is he scared of? He's scared. I'll tell you what he's scared of. He's scared of the court looking at what he did and going, that is downright defamation that you made against these people, and you're going to have to face some kind of a punishment for that. That's what he's scared of. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Herberg, who puts in a 15 and says, thank you, and they put in 2 clapping signs behind it.
And thank you so much for the support and helping us to keep the channel running. I like that we got the clapping noises one right then when we got done with that. But thank you for the support, Herberg, and helping the channel to keep on running, because folks like you, all the way up from Norway, actually, because that's a Norwegian kroner, help this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again.
All right, and our next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a 10 and says, just wanted to kick in, and thanks for another awesome show.
Hey, and thank you so much for kicking in the door. And also, thank you for helping the channel to keep on running. Thank you for enjoying it. It means a lot to me that folks enjoy our channel. I would hate to do this and have no one enjoy it. And so thank you so much. And we're greatly honored to know that you've been having a good time here in the news tonight. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Epic Trains Canada, who puts in a 10 and says, no comment for tonight, so take one from the live chat, and that German phrase right there, and Slav Ukraine.
And Slav Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for the support, helping the channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to put your support towards pizza, coffee, and maybe some other things. Monster Energy drinks, which I gotta tell you, that made my heart feel like it was on fire today. So I'm probably not gonna drink one of those again. That's just straight up like acid or whatever. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the live chat question they requested is going to go to Plexus Gaming, who says, do you think with all these hotspots igniting that we are witnessing a general war develop?
Not really. They're mostly separated wars. And while they're kind of geographically similar, Serbia and Ukraine, they're kind of they're in the overarching umbrella, but they're also two separate things for the most part. So I would say this isn't going to be like the start of World War or anything. It's just that things are starting to flare up in the area. But I don't think it's going to expand beyond that, at least from what we're seeing right now. But that could change. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Russ Rizzo, who puts in a 5 and says, I'm telling you, I told my psychiatrist I got some bad tendencies. He told me from now on I have to pay in advance. Oh, just 7 bottles of Ukrainian booze. I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I can't handle it anymore. Oh, man. I went to my psychiatrist and I told him, oh, man, I'm feeling terrible. I'm feeling like Indian and all. He told me from now on I have to pay in advance. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, my doctor, my doctor, Vinny Vambachi. Oh, man.
But anyways, thank you so much for the support, Russ Rizzo. And also, you just won 7 bottles of Ukrainian booze. Man, my boy be boozing. But still, thank you for the support and congratulations on winning the lottery. And I hope it's good stuff. I don't drink, but I hope it's good. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Hein family, who puts in a 5 and says, I don't have a lot of money, but I hope this speaks louder than the small amount it is. And it does. It's the gesture that counts. And thank you very much for that very generous support.
And I thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. Any support, no matter how big or how small, it is viewed the same by me. It's just the idea that people find this channel worthwhile to support and try to support it, whether it be huge or little, anything in between. It just means a lot to me, and we're more than honored to have you find this channel worthwhile to support and help it to keep running, because it is folks like you that help this channel to be possible. Every single little super chat that we get all adds up together at the end of the night to be the total that we both make as a job each day. And so every single bit counts, and we're greatly appreciative that you find the channel worth supporting at all, whether it be a massive amount or a tiny amount like $1. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Blue Flam 777 LSA, who puts in a $10 donation and says, B-Day month pizza and beer, tuna casserole and mouthwash.
And thank you for the support.
That is an interesting combo, I gotta say.
Honestly, I don't drink, but in between those two options, I would go with pizza and beer over tuna casserole and mouthwash. That sounds unappetizing. But still, thank you for the support, Blue Flam, and it is the birthday month. My birthday, actually, well, we actually celebrated Matthew's birthday on air, his actual birthday, which was kind of funny because we never celebrated mine. We didn't even make a mention of my birthday, which was in February. So just completely skipped my birthday. We were both like, we'll have an official birthday for both of us sometime in the summer. And then we just decided we were going to ditch that. So then I didn't even have a birthday on stream, but it doesn't matter. But still, thank you so much for the support. And it is the birthday month. It's always the birthday month here for the LSA. But to be serious with y'all, we are actually going to try and do something big for the birthday of the Lee Spring Army, because we know the actual day now, and we want to celebrate this community as best as possible. And also, when we were emailing United 24 Media, which is a part of United 24, about the affiliation a while ago, I was actually asking them if they could possibly consider giving a shout out to the Lee Spring Army, not the channel, but the community. Sadly, they weren't really able to help us out with that. But still, I thought it would be a great gesture if I was able to get all of y'all a massive shout out for everything that y'all have done supporting Ukraine in this war so far. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Brian Rosenberger. And thank you very much, Brian, for your support as well. And he says, to show my support for two of the most informed and intelligent young gentlemen I have the pleasure to watch, from an old salt USMC veteran in Slav Ukraine. And also, first off, thank you for your service, by the way. And also, that is very kind words as well. It's almost too high a praise, to be honest with you, but thank you very much for the kind words. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta tell you, that praise was so high up, it sounds like he wrote an official letter to the Secretary of Defense. That was actually a really high praise. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and the incredible kind words. Those are those are above and beyond what we usually get. And I got to thank you so much for your service as well in the U.S. Marine Corps. The Marines are an impressive branch with an equally impressive dress uniform. I got to tell you, the Marines have got the best one there is. No one can top it. I think everyone in the military knows that too. Everyone knows you just can't compete with the Marine dress blues. Just can't top it. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel, Brian, and helping us to keep this thing running, because your praise is your praise means more to us than any amount of support could. And so thank you so much once again, and Slava Ukraini, and thank you for being a member of this mighty and amazing Leaf Spring Army. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, SY Tiger said it's posted and maybe you can't see it. And I'll do some looking after the stream to see if I can spot that, because it is a lot of notifications coming in right now. But I will see if I can spot it. And if your username is different on Twitter, I'm hesitant to say to put it in the live chat because we have nutcases watching. I don't want anybody to get harassed.
Oh, I got it.
But oh, you do?
I got it.
Good.
I found it. Hey, look at that. Dude, that's beautiful.
Dang, that is nice. That's a wait a minute. Is that an Unacleat or is that somewhere else?
That's Toksuk Bay.
Toksuk Bay. Man,
Yeah.
that is something.
Man,
that is actually very beautiful.
Looks like the sky's on fire. Man, that's gorgeous.
It's on fire, like the roof's on fire.
Out here in Birmingham, the sunsets are usually like this red color. Well, it's not really red. It's like a violet red color. It's beautiful. But this is something. Honestly, this looks like the sun rising over the savannah in Africa whenever you see it on like a nature documentary. That is gorgeous, though. Absolutely beautiful. And just in case y'all are wondering where this is, and let me go find it. Here it is. This is the place. No? Man, where the hell is it? Here we go. Here's Toksuk Bay. So this picture, let me see if I can geolocate this. There's a boat. It's probably right here somewhere around this little pond. But I gotta say this, though. Absolutely beautiful picture. That is something. And I gotta say, the sunset, if I'm getting this right, it's the sunset or the sunrise, Matthew?
I believe that's the sunset, I'm pretty sure.
That is beautiful. Of course, when you see it enough times, it starts to get a little old, but just seeing that from a glance, that is an amazing sunset right there. Absolutely gorgeous. And thank you for sharing that with us, SYI. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from I Am. And thank you very much for your support as well. And I said, for the Call 'em Out Fund. Oh, man.
Oh, man, we're calling them out. Call them out. And thank you for the support, I Am, and helping the channel to keep on running. Our honest inclination is to not even talk about the guy. It's a waste of air. But at the same time, it's something that no matter how many times we try to drop, it just keeps on coming back. So don't worry, everyone. It's not just for us, it's for y'all. We're going to get the guy served. We're going to have the lawsuit go forward. And we're going to have justice done, not just for us, but all of y'all in the community. The lies that this guy has been spreading around are unbelievable. They're unfounded and completely uncalled for, especially considering that we have tried to extend an olive branch about 8 times at this point. I think if we made an actual count, it's around 8. And it's absolutely...
Y'all do know, I just want to say this, by the way, unfortunately, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to tell folks this because some people aren't aware of it. We've actually made 3 attempts to create peace with the guy. The last one was just about a month ago. I sent the guy an email, and it was a very politely worded email considering everything that's happened in the past between us and him. And I offered to end the lawsuit, to settle the thing. He didn't have to pay us a dime, not even court costs. We'd absorb all the costs. All he had to do was agree not to criticize our channel. We wouldn't criticize his channel in return. And we were going to tell everyone the beef's over and have peace. And he never responded to that email whatsoever and ignored it. So I rescinded the offer 5 days later, and that was the way it ended. And then he started up this crusade he's currently on, which has escalated all the way to the point of making very extreme physical threats up to today. So that's how that's going. And, you know, I'm starting to see how badly unstable this guy actually is. I wasn't sure how ill he was in the head, but I think it's becoming very clear to pretty much everyone that this guy is nuts. He's threatening to assault people for handing him some paperwork, which that's not what normal people do. So, you know, I don't even really need to explain that any further. It's pretty self-evident.
And also, one more thing I'd like to add, because the lies that this guy says is insane. Like, For example, some of y'all may know that he just literally ripped off one of our videos recently and just uploaded it, didn't even make it transfigurative or anything, which is a violation of copyright. So then he sits there and says he's never communicated with me, which is a flat out lie, because right here, and I'm not going to show this on screen, we'll, if we ever want to show it to y'all, we'll show it later, but this was sent on December 16th of 2022. It's the first communication we ever had with the guy directly, and it was me. I emailed him, and what I was doing in the email was telling him, hey man, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I think your channel's great, and I don't really think this beef is even warranted. That was the first email we've ever sent him, and it wasn't him reaching out to us. It was us reaching out to him to quash the beef, but, that's not how he tells the story. He's the victim of his own creation. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next super chat goes to Dean London, who puts in a 5 and says, "Wee wo, boom, the doom, for the Ruski is due." And that's a nice haiku.
Man, that's not them there be one of them haikus, you know what I mean? But still, thank you for the support of the channel to keep on running, and I like that. It was a good poem, I gotta say. And so with that, we are on to the next one, but thank you once again.
All right, and the next one goes to Jared Foster, who puts in a 5 and says, "Didn't President Zelensky say there was going to be a major announcement today? And if he did, I missed it, and what was it?" And it actually hasn't come out yet.
I think it's coming out tomorrow, but nobody has heard it yet from what I understand. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Barry Woodward, who puts in a 5 and says, "Ask Drunky Monkey for a wish. Slava LSA."
Can I have a wish? Can I have a wish, Drunky Monkey? But still, thank you for the support. And if that's supposed to be us asking Drunky Monkey for a wish, can we have a wish? And if it's supposed to be you asking us for a wish, what is your wish, Drunky Monkey? We will try and fulfill it. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last super chat for the night. So we're moving back into our live chat questions. And tonight, sadly, we didn't have the Morse code decoders of the stream.
We did.
We did?
Yeah, we did actually. I saw someone, I forgot their name, but I saw them get it. And this is also something that is completely unrelated to the war, but Manor Lords is going to be released soon. Are you all ready? And also Long Live the LSA. That's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. And that was the Morse code message of the night. I only saw one person get it, but I'm sure there was maybe another. Not really exactly certain, but still, absolutely amazing. And one of my favorite video games. Well, I haven't even played it yet, but it's going to be coming out here soon. And I was wanting to give them a massive shout out because I've been following their game for about 4.5 years at this point. It's going to be an amazing one. It's called Manor Lords. Go and check it out. I know it has nothing to do with the war, nothing to do with this channel, but I really just am a huge fan. It's one guy with a passion to make a medieval city builder game with some warfare elements tacked onto it, and it's an amazing game. It's incredible. I got to play the demo. It's top notch, and I hope y'all all get to eventually get that game and play it as well if y'all are into video games. But with that, I hope that covers the Morse code message fairly well. And due to running overtime massively tonight, we're only going to be able to get to 3 live chats, and then we're going to have to round out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Avari Mandabratis, who says, "I think Russia wants to buy Western arms from the Taliban, and I long suspected something like this might happen, and hopefully old suspicions will poison any fledgling alliance."
Hopefully it will. I'll have to agree with you on that. We don't really know what they have in mind or what their real plan is, but it's a very concerning one, and I think it does revolve around American weapons. Hopefully it will fall apart because of the old animosity in between the former Soviet Union and Afghanistan, but who knows? I mean, hell, some of those people may have even been alive to fight the Soviet Union way back in the day. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night. Before we do, I actually have to say this really quickly because I see some people saying, man, I want to go over to that channel and get a piece of the action. I suggest you don't. The guy is obviously psychotic. He's threatening people with death. And also another thing is that I don't.
I do want to clarify one thing, that the post necessarily doesn't make a death threat, but it does make a physical threat. So that's still bad on its own. But I don't know if it goes as far as a death threat.
Well, I don't know of any other way you get sent to God rather than dying.
Well, I think it might have been worded slightly different, but nonetheless, he's still threatening physical harm on people.
So I wouldn't go over there and mess with the guy, and also his community isn't really that much to look at either. Another thing, too, is that I'm not really into the idea of going around. Now this guy's an asshole. Let me make that clear. And I'm not going to mince words with that. The guy's a straight up asshole. But I'm not into the idea of having communities brigading people. That's something that he's encouraged his community to do, and they do it everywhere, including on Twitter. They tried to get us into a fight with all kinds of people that we had to go through and try and clear up with them. Don't engage these people. If anything, just make sure to go around and combat their lies whenever they pop up, but don't go out of their way to try and engage their community, because it is a pretty... It's one filled with despotism, to say the least. But anyways... I hope that does address that fairly well. So don't go looking for a fight. If you happen to see one of them lying somewhere, though, feel free to hop in, but don't go out of your way to go engage them, because there's something wrong with them. But anyways, with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Wondrin, who says, could there be a unique armored tactic to be found using the Western tank trio, the Abrams, Challenger, and Leopard, together as a unit?
I don't really think so. Toad and Frog together again, but I don't really think so. I don't think we're going to be seeing any joint tank actions. They're probably going to keep the Leopards with the Leopards, the Challengers with the Challengers, and the Abrams with the Abrams, because they're kind of built around specific doctrinal ideas. So I don't really think you're going to see them mesh well together or be mixed into units together. So they'll probably remain segregated and attached to specific brigades and units in certain parts of the front line. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Neil Vizanon. He says, can you guys explain the Ukrainian president's plan for peace? And I've been hearing about it, but I really can't find much info.
I actually haven't.
Give them no territory. that's the plan.
I think Zelensky's going to say, give us back our land. And the Russians going to go, no. War goes on, and then he'll just keep going. That's probably what the peace plan is. So we'll have to wait and see. I haven't really heard specific details about it at the moment, so I'd have to declare ignorance or feign ignorance, whatever you want to call it. But at the moment, I don't really know for certain. So with that, on that bombshell, it's time to round out tonight's stream. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. At the peak tonight, there were 6,000 of y'all here live. And over the course of the stream, 27,250 of y'all have watched the stream. We are entirely honored to know that we've been able to cover the news for 6,000 of y'all live and 27,250 of y'all over the course of tonight's stream. If you did enjoy and this was your first time on the channel, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like and comment, because it makes us really happy, and also it keeps you apprised of the news that comes out on this channel. We run this 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, every day but Monday, covering the war in picture and video evidence, just like this, every single night, and we also put out short war summaries that are around 10 to 15 minutes long, that also cover the war, but in a much shorter and more condensed format, in case if you don't have enough time to watch a stream. But with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And thank you all for another great stream. We'll see you all tomorrow. And of course, Slava Ukraine and Slava LSA.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.